there, head of BlackRock Investment Institute, joining us down the line with a sense of, well, where policy goes in all this, Nara.
Absolutely. Taking a look at equities, we're still in the green for the Stock 600, up 0.4%, third day of gains. This is Bloomberg.
Are you looking for senior care for your...
Not all heroes wear capes, but most wear tights. Keep up with everything happening in the wild world of pro wrestling with a podcast on TuneIn. For expert analysis of the latest wrestling storylines, turn on the WWE podcast.
Big Steve-al edition.
Or listen to the Steve Austin Show for no-holds-barred conversations with wrestling's biggest personalities.
Because now on the show, everybody's kind of the same size, but as soon as I saw you, it's been...
For these and more, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Wondering what to play next? Want to know what other TuneIn listeners are listening to right now? Head to the trending section under Browse to explore the most popular stations and podcasts on TuneIn today. Millions of listeners like you can't be wrong.
Get your daily dose of NFL shop talk with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Start your morning off right with Around the NFL.
Injured, depleted roster into the playoffs, and I didn't think they belonged in the playoffs.
I think overall, though, it was a great divisional round weekend because you got the first one.
Run into the end zone with the Move the Sticks podcast.
We had a fun little Zoom cocktail hour last night.
Oh, yeah.
What a star-studded affair. Greg, you were there for the earlier part, but it really popped off a little later on. We had Zach Goldman.
And dive deep into the sidelines with the Peter King podcast.
On the occasion of his 50th birthday, come down and record a little bit of retrospective on the life and times of Brett Lorenzo Favre.
That sounds like a bestseller.
It sounds like a precursor to a funeral. That's what it is.
I wasn't thinking that.
Explore these and more hard-hitting NFL podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Middle of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
The idea is to really hold the economy in suspended animation until we get control of this virus.
We are very much in a picture of monetary dominance.
We will get slower growth. I mean, let's not get confused about that.
We are in a national crisis. I think it is for all parties to pull together.
The euro area is facing an economic contraction of a magnitude and speed that are unprecedented in peacetime.
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe on Bloomberg Radio.
A very good morning from London. I'm Caroline Hepke.
And I'm Matt Miller from the Bloomberg Bureau in Berlin. Thank goodness you're back.
Oh, thanks. Oh, I'm so
I missed
pleased.
you.
Oh, did you?
I need you.
Oh, good. I'm pleased to be back. I had a couple of days in the sunshine and also a couple of days, of course, glued to my television, watching the ire of the British public pour forth onto Boris Johnson's SPAD, his special advisor, his chief aide, Dominic Cummings. He was a divisive figure to start with, but him breaking the lockdown has really annoyed a lot of people.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at what's going on in markets right now, Caroline, because aside from that, I think the other big story has been the rally in global equities. And, you had Monday off, right? Monday was, for those who aren't from England, one of the greatest things about the United Kingdom is that they just assign random bank holidays for no reason other than vacation. So Monday was it the spring bank holiday?
Spring bank holiday,
spring bank holiday. In the U.S., it was Memorial Day.
Yeah.
So you had a day off, but then you powered back yesterday and played a little bit of catch-up, up, I think, 1.25% on the FTSE. The DAX on Monday was up 317 points. Yesterday, it was up another 100, shooting up over 11,500. And these equity indexes are on the rise again today. So the DAX just crossing over 11,600, up another 100 points today. The FTSE up another 1% and change to 6,137. I mean, the optimism that is driving this rally is just incredible, even though I was listening to Christine Lagarde's Facebook Youth Conference Q&A.
Yes.
just now. And listeners, if you get sick of us, you can switch over to Live Go on the Bloomberg and hear her listening to questions from the kids. She says that this is playing out somewhere between her medium case scenario and her severe scenario. So on the bad side of middle of the road.
Yeah, well, perhaps that will sharpen the minds, of course, of leaders in Europe today as we get von der Leyen's bailout plan, proposal for helping Europe. Yeah, it is interesting that we have the US Stock 600 up by 0.4% right now, FTSE 100 gaining 1.1%. I mean, it's also worth bearing in mind, of course, that the tensions between the US and China continue to build, with the US president promising action this week. Although
but
sort of
seemingly
typically
not priced
obscure.
in, right?
No, it would seem
That's
not.
what I think is so interesting.
Yeah, but then it was tentative comments, so and not a particular plan. So I wonder if the markets are waiting for the concrete action.
Yeah, absolutely. We do. You know what? Let's go over. We have a fantastic economist waiting in the wings. I spoke with him a little bit earlier on Bloomberg Television, and now we bring him on to the radio program. Simon Cajano-Evans is chief economist at GemCorp Capital. Simon, what do you think about this? The relationship hasn't been stellar to begin with between Washington and Beijing. And of course, Hong Kong has been, hanging in the balance. Now it looks like it's headed south. The markets don't seem to be reacting. Am I reading that wrong?
Well, it's a situation sort of status quo antebellum, with the war being the one that we waged on this virus. So we're just getting back to what we saw 12 months ago. You would have thought that the virus would have been a wake-up call to everybody. Obviously hasn't, but let's face it, the kickback effects from the economy and on-the-ground realities will mean that national politics will not survive in this global pandemic. And that's really my true belief.
Okay. Interesting. In that case, how do you apply that view to Europe? As I say, I mean, countries across Europe reopening now as the infection starts to subside a little bit. Is the proposal from von der Leyen that we're expecting going to be enough? And how do you think it's going to be distributed? Will it have an impact alongside, of course, the individual bailouts for the plane makers, the car makers, and others in Europe?
It's a very interesting point that you're making, because I think the European Union is the one regional body where we've seen some sort of cohesive reaction, if you like. Wasn't there at the beginning, and wasn't there for a month or so, but we're starting to see this, as you mentioned now. And I think the assumption that we have to make is that the European continues to consolidate. The same political parties that were in power 30 years ago are still in power today in the individual countries. They made the decision to pull all countries like Portugal, Italy, Greece into the Eurozone. They need to continue along this path of cohesion and fiscal consolidation. And one day we will have a combined fiscal policy. Maybe it takes 5 years, maybe it takes 10 years. But like with everything else, I think that this pandemic is going to accelerate that process in Europe too.
By the way, it reminds me that we have three incredibly powerful women at work here. You've got Christine Lagarde running the ECB, Ursula von der Leyen running the European Commission, Angela Merkel running the biggest economy in Europe. Do you think that these women, together with Emmanuel Macron, can kind of push Europe over the precipice of becoming a federal entity, of becoming a real, true European Union?
I think the impulse is definitely there. And I think Mrs. Merkel, let's face it, has done an amazing job in getting her country out of this pandemic. The same was in Austria. It also depends on what government you have in place at any particular point in time. And that's why I'm using Germany and Austria as a benchmark to see what happens in the rest of Europe, and also what happens eventually in the United States as we gradually exit this pandemic. But we are facing unprecedented times. This is a 1-in-100-year event, crisis, whatever you want to call it. And I don't know what you think, but I really do think that we'll get very strong positive impulses out of this. Even if alone it shows that, the weather is much better for environmental reasons, all these type of things.
What do you... Sorry, you mean... the green agenda is another big one. What do you make then of the UK, though, in all of this? The Chancellor Rishi Sunak talking about winding down the furlough scheme, and we have that now concern around the cliff edge. That the government here and in Europe and in the US are trying to avoid, but there are signs of an uptick in people being laid off, and that potentially causing further problems.
No question about it. And that's why, as I mentioned at the beginning, as we were discussing before, the kickback will come if people or governments, leaders move along this nationalist path and try to ignore that this is a more global issue and needs global reaction function. So I think what we've definitely seen is unprecedented fiscal impulses and also monetary impulses that were actually very proactive. So that is one place where governments everywhere did react very well. And I think that the furloughing schemes are a major part of this. You will definitely, and we've seen it already in jobs numbers, get a hit to the employment market, but I'm actually quite a bit more optimistic than maybe many out there. And I think that we'll see a V-shape as far as PMIs are concerned in the first place, as we were discussing with Matt before, as far as we see traffic congestion, other leading indicators are showing us. So I think, and we all have this desire to go out there and do something. We've been locked up now, especially in the UK, for a couple of months now. It's going on for too long, and I think that the impulse and the innovation will be there.
By the way, I wanted to ask you the question of the day. We were talking about this on TV, but we didn't quite get to it. And it's an interesting one from the MLive blog because it presupposes that you believe the economic and financial realities are financial market realities are diverging. But the blog is asking, why are the real economy and financial markets diverging? What do you think?
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, the people that you have theoretically in financial markets are people who have been, dealing with this many years, many decades. They perhaps foresee what others may not foresee in the real sector. And you have this split between financial market participants, perhaps, and also real economy participants. So I think the financial markets are always a few steps ahead of the real economy, as in predicting and seeing what may happen in the future. Sometimes they get it very wrong. There's no question about that. But I think on balance, they do seem to see that with some anticipation. So I think that really does explain that. And the second point is that, as I was mentioning before, we have not seen this sort of fiscal impulses and monetary impulses before. So there's plenty of cash, if you like, out there, plenty of liquidity out there that needs to be invested. That goes into financial market assets, whether it's bonds, whether it's equities, whether it's emerging market funds, all these different types of assets. So I think that would partly explain those moves that we've seen.
Okay, so the divergence between the real economy and the markets. Very interesting to get your take. Thank you so much, Simon Quijano-Jones, who's Chief Economist at Gemcore Capital, for joining us on Bloomberg Radio and Television this morning. Good to speak to you.
Let's get over right now to Leanne Gerrans for your World National News. Leanne?
Matt, thank you. Police have fired pepper sprays. Hundreds of protesters hit the streets in Hong Kong. At least 180 people have also been arrested as they demonstrate against China's increasing control over the city. Bloomberg's Karen Lee reports.
The morning commute was largely unaffected, with Hong Kong police deploying a large number of officers downtown in order to deter demonstrations. Student groups and trade unions had called for a general strike and protest to oppose several pieces of China-backed legislation, including a bill that would criminalize disrespect toward the Chinese national anthem. In Hong Kong, Karen Lee, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Now here in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson is facing more pressure to fire his top aide, Dominic Cummings. Polls show voters think that Cummings did break lockdown rules, and members of Parliament also think he should go. The Prime Minister faces an hour and a half of questioning from senior lawmakers. That's later today. South Korea has reported 40 more coronavirus cases within a day. Bloomberg's Ji Haley says this number is quite a spike in an already flattened infection curve.
Health officials in Korea say they're expecting more secondary infections derived from nightclubs in Seoul, especially at an e-commerce company called Coupang, where 36 of its employees at a center outside of the capital were confirmed with the virus. The government says they're keeping a close watch, particularly on local infections. In Seoul, Ji Haley, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And for the first time, Twitter has added a fact-check label to President Trump's tweets. The president made some unsubstantiated claims about mail-in voting, and Twitter added links reading, quote, "Get the facts about mail-in ballots." The president responded with a tweet saying, "Twitter is completely stifling free speech, and I, as a president, will not allow it to happen." Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Caroline.
Thank you so much, Leanne Gerrans. Now, coming up next on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, the Prime Minister has centralised power in the UK, but Boris Johnson seems unwilling to wield it when it comes to his top aide, Dominic Cummings. So writes Bloomberg opinion columnist Martin Ivans, who gives us his take next. Of course, well known, the former editor of the Sunday Times newspaper, gives us his view in our opinion column coming up next. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, with markets in Europe right now up by 0.25% on the US stock 600. This is Bloomberg.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Sudden shock or sustained slowdown? When uncertainty threatens, shareholders look to the C-suite to maintain profitability. And for 2 decades, the leaders of Fortune 500 and Global 2000 companies have turned to GEP for results. GEP's procurement and supply chain solutions help reduce costs, improve performance, and boost EBITDA, helping great companies stay on track and primed for the next phase of the business cycle. GEP, helping the world's best companies do better.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, "Mom, we'll figure it out."
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Heidi Stroud-Watts.
Well, Hong Kong is bracing for what could be its biggest day of protest in months, with pro-democracy groups calling for a general strike against China's plans to impose a national security law. Opponents fear it will curtail essential freedoms, and the US says it casts doubt on Hong Kong's future. We're joined now by the former Hong Kong Justice Secretary, Elsie Leung. So isn't there a real concern that Hong Kong's institutions and Hong Kong people and foreign investors are looking to be undermined if this goes through?
No, I don't think so, because in the first paragraph, first article of the draft decision, which is before the for the National People's Congress, it is stated that the Central People's Government will unswervingly, fully and faithfully implement the principles of one country, two systems, Hong Kong people governing Hong Kong, and a high degree of autonomy. Now, which country does not have laws concerning protection for the protection of national security? I think in the States they have, in Britain they have, and it is natural that there should be national security law. Now, in Hong Kong, the rights and the freedom of citizens are well protected by the basic law, as well as our Hong Kong Bill of Rights Ordinance.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning from Bloomberg's World Headquarters in New York City. I'm Anne-Marie Horderm with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. Markets came under pressure across Asia trading this morning. The Hang Seng, as well as the CSI 300 in China, had red arrows. And this comes after the Trump administration, people familiar say, are considering a range of sanctions to punish China for its crackdown on Hong Kong. But European equity markets and U.S. futures are really shrugging it off. The FTSE 100 is up 0.9% alongside the Kakaran and the DAX as well, up 0.7% this morning. S&P 500 mini futures are also pointing to a higher start in New York City. Possibly some optimism yesterday coming from Jamie Dimon, saying that we could see a fairly rapid recovery. Maybe that V-shaped recovery is making a comeback. Foreign exchange this morning, the British pound is under a little bit of pressure. 1.23 down 0.2%. We are seeing a little bit stronger Bloomberg dollar index. In commodities this morning, Brent and WTI both in the red. WTI trading just under $34 a barrel. Russia signaling they are ready to start easing output cuts in July. So that sticks to the current deal. Potentially that puts them at odds with the kingdom, which we've already seen cut even deeper. And in the bond market this morning, we are seeing yields lower across most of Europe. And then the 10-year Treasury yield 0.69%. That's a Bloomberg Business Radio Flash. Now here's Leanne Garens with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Leanne.
Good morning, Anne-Marie, and thank you. The city at the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak claims it's tested most of its population in just 12 days as China braces for a second wave of infections. Bloomberg calculations say almost 7 million residents have been checked this month following a new cluster of virus cases near the border with North Korea. Even before the testing, most Wuhan companies had volunteered to check their staff. Now women are more likely to have quit, lost their job, or been furloughed since the start of the lockdown. Research by the Institute for Fiscal Studies has also found mothers are taking on more childcare and housework responsibilities than fathers. It's warning of a potential increase in the gender pay gap once COVID-19 measures are lifted. And finally, an air travel corridor between Australia and New Zealand could be trialled within weeks. This will be a key test of how international flights worldwide can resume while the coronavirus threat does remain. Draft guidelines will be handed to both governments in early June. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on QuickTech by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It's 9:20 a.m. here in London. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion, and we're joined by Bloomberg Opinion columnist and director of the Times newspapers board, Martin Ivins, who's writing about the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his reluctance to sack his top aide Dominic Cummings. Martin, very good morning to you. Obviously, you will be well known to many well-read listeners out there as the editor of the Sunday Times newspaper for so many years. So I'm interested in your take on the saga with Dominic Cummings and why the Prime Minister has not forced him to resign, or indeed he has not sacked him.
Well, thank you, Caroline, and thanks for those kind words. Yes, I think Boris Johnson sees Dominic Cummings as a sort of wonder worker, and in British terms, electorally, he has been. I mean, he's been a successful strategist behind winning referendums now for more than a decade. But I think there are other reasons why Boris is reluctant. The Prime Minister actually is one of us. You know, he's a former newspaper columnist, a magazine editor. I think he's highly resistant to what he considers to be a sort of a press campaign to bring down one of his own. And I think there's also a sort of a further instinct at play. He's a libertarian by instinct. I don't mean in a sort of ideological sense, but sort of a natural libertarian, that he feels that it's wrong to take a sort of rather puritanical view of personal conduct. He's led a free and easy lifestyle himself, and I think he feels it would be hypocritical and wrong to be judgmental of Mr. Cummings.
Interesting. Tolerant, in a sense. Very, you're saying non-judgmental. What is it about Dominic Cummings that makes him so important to Prime Minister Johnson?
I think he has a sort of ferocious focus, that he knows where he's going, but despite the arrogance that he often displays to those who he thinks aren't as bright or as focused as he is, that he gives a direction to politics that I think Johnson values, and I think it's also a driving will. You notice that before the last general election in the United Kingdom, that he practically forced the Liberal Democrats and the Labour Party to give him an election that on terms that didn't favour them, as you could see in the result, by attempting a sort of to dissolve Parliament in a way that some people deem to be unconstitutional. He gets a reaction out of people and forces them to act in ways they wouldn't have.
To take a position. No, but I wonder whether, with all of that kind of pro Cummings side, and one can understand why that support would be there, the polls that have come out, sort of 3 in the last few days, really do show the British public very angry about this. Yes, okay, maybe it's a newspaper campaigning issue, but I think it does also, doesn't it, tap into the anger and the annoyance and the frustration that we all feel that we've been locked up and that somebody's broken the rules? Can he last, I suppose, is my question. Look into your crystal ball.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Caroline. I mean, I think in normal times, I think people might take a more generous view and say, look, he may have bent the rules because he was a concerned husband and a concerned father, but these aren't normal times. And I think you're right. I think we're all fantastically irritated about the inconvenience to our life caused by the lockdown. And for many people, it's a case of do as I say and not as I do. And that's pretty dangerous, both for Johnson and Cummings, because part of their appeal going back to the British referendum was an anti-elitist sentiment, saying, well, so the big guys always were telling you what to do.
Yeah, if it comes full circle, then people won't be pleased. Thank you so much for coming on radio. I hope this will be the first of many. That's our Bloomberg opinion columnist, Martin Ivins, joining us. You can read more OPIN on your terminal. This is Bloomberg.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr. McLaren plans to cut about 1,200 jobs to help counter the financial impact of the coronavirus pandemic. In a statement, the British supercar maker says the layoffs will impact the applied technologies, automotive and racing businesses, as well as support and back office functions. McLaren says the temporary closure of factories and showrooms, as well as the cancellation of motorsport events, abruptly cut off valuable revenue streams. Having already trimmed costs across the group, management is having to dig deeper for additional savings. Chairman Paul Walsh says we now have no other choice but to reduce the size of our workforce. Liverpool announced they will be contacting season ticket holders over the next 14 days to ensure they are refunded for the club's remaining 4 Premier League games. According to The Telegraph, Liverpool will lose an estimated £12.9 million in ticket sales this season. With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr.
Market upheavals.
The narrative is driven by uncertainty about the virus.
Political reversals.
It's not clear that some of the Republicans up on the Hill are agreed with the Republican White House.
Economic shifts.
The macro clearly being driven by the coronavirus outbreak.
Everything seems to be in motion.
Will it also mean a global recession in your view now?
But here, you're on solid ground.
Looking forward to guiding you through all of this.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
The Boston Symphony Orchestra presents BSO at Home. While you stay inside, enjoy a curated collection of archived concerts and behind-the-scenes stories from BSO musicians. BSO Homeschool provides lessons for music lovers of all ages. New performances and messages from musicians are added regularly. Enjoy these selections and much more at bso.org/at-home.
Picture in your mind a stylish Audi with striking LED headlights, sporty alloy wheels, and some of our most advanced features, including a 10-inch digital cockpit and smart assistant systems like lane departure warning. Picture what that Audi looks like. Now think smaller. The Audi A1. It's not a small car, it's a small Audi. Visit audi.co.uk. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik.
TSB believe in people helping people. That's why they've created TSB Smart Agent, a new secure way for TSB to answer your personal and business banking questions online. Find out more at tsb.co.uk. Automated service available 24/7. TSB partners available 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday to Friday.
Helen is dreaming of fighting a flock of 40-foot flamingos. But in reality, she's helping fight COVID-19 in her sleep. Like thousands of others, she's joined the Dream Team. By using the Dream Lab app, they're helping scientists speed up the search for potential treatments. I'll fight you. Keep fighting, Helen. Search Vodafone Dream Lab and join the Dream Team tonight.
Dream Lab app is owned by Vodafone Foundation, an independent charity. Registration number 1089625. Full terms at vodafone.co.uk/dreamlab.
The NHL is always on the ice with these awesome hockey podcasts on TuneIn. Get your goal with the Spittin' Chicklets podcast.
Brian Yandel, Keith Yandel, thanks for coming on. What's going on?
Nothing much. Glad to be here. You guys got some nice digs here.
We heard you took Southwest 2-stop flight to get out here.
Yeah, well, just...
Carve up the ice with NHL at the rink.
The other day I wrote a story. Artemi Panarin, Semyon Varlamov, Sergei Bobrovsky, they all helped arrange for the purchase of N95 masks to benefit hospitals in their respective markets. This is another one of those positive stories you're seeing.
Or create your own power play with Locked On NHL.
All these teams invested future assets to take a run at the Stanley Cup right now. Like, all of those teams would have a real serious gripe, like trading these multiple first-round picks to make a run at a cup. You're right.
Discover these and more NHL podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB Digital Radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Good morning from the Bloomberg Bureau in Berlin. I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Caroline Hebke here in London. A warm welcome back to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. So in the market, we have really risk on. A positive tone in Europe. Your stock 600 gaining 0.4%. But actually individual markets faring even better. The Xetra DAX up by 1% and the FTSE 100 up similarly. So this, despite the worries about the US and the continued tensions between the US and China, S&P 500 E-mini futures up by 0.7% right now. We had a mixed bag though over in Asia. It was really the Hang Seng that took the brunt of the hit, obviously on concerns about more protests and the tension between Hong Kong and China. As for the bond markets this morning, we trade at the moment at 68 basis points for US benchmark yields, German yields at negative 44 basis points, down by 2 basis points. This as we await von der Leyen's new plan for Europe in terms of bailing out countries hardest hit by the pandemic, and so tightening spreads also across Europe.
Yeah, and we see also U.S. futures up. I just want to shout out for those who are prepping for the U.S. market open, almost 1% gains on futures. Even after yesterday, the Dow was up 529 points. So massive rally for risk assets in the U.S. yesterday, and that looks set to continue as well when the New York Stock Exchange opens for, and the NASDAQ open for trade this morning. I want to get over to one of the big movers. Renault is up more than 9% in Paris today. France and President Macron have pledged 8 billion euros to prop up the country's auto industry. That plan includes a subsidy of 7,000 euros for each citizen who wants to purchase an electric car. They hope to increase output to 1 million electric or hybrid vehicles by 2025. They're also giving loans to companies, including a 5 billion euro loan guarantee for Renault, which is why that car maker is rising so much. For more, let's go live to Paris, where Bloomberg's Anya Nussbaum is standing by. So, Anya, what are the details of this big bailout plan?
Good morning. Yeah, it's a bit a headline number you mentioned, and 8 billion euros, and it's an important number because it's an important signal for the auto industry, shareholders, consumers. But what we're really talking about here is about 1 billion euros plus of new investments and subsidies, because this number includes no measure like the state-backed loan you mentioned for Renault. Otherwise, we're also talking about investments to help suppliers upgrade their production, move at scale, for example, purchase robots. And the key measure is certainly an improved cash for clunker and subsidy scheme that should help boosting demand. And basically now, if you're a French consumers and you want to get a new car, you'll get quite a big sum if you ditch your old clunker for an electric or hybrid vehicle.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there was a 90% drop in car sales in France in April, so no surprise that the industry needs this kind of help. But is it actually going to be enough? And Matt mentioned the automakers, they're up 3.5% across Europe, automakers and car parts companies. But is this kind of cash, this sort of incentive, going to make people go out and buy straight away?
It's a good question, because there's still restrictions on travel right now in France, so it doesn't feel like a good time to buy a car, especially considering the economic situation. And, well, it may help restock some of the vehicles that were not sold and that are piling up because customers were stuck at home during the lockdown. It should help car makers going for the next few months, but in the long run, the sector will surely need more help and will not escape job cuts and plant closures. In fact, I wouldn't rule out at all other measures to help Renault, fresh capital injection or other measures anyways by the end of the year to help the company.
I think one of the most interesting aspects of this, Anya, is, we're talking so much about countries trying to bring the production chains back home, back inside their borders, and France is no different. Isn't this plan structured to bring manufacturing back into France?
To some extent, but it's not essentially about manufacturing, but also about R&D, and this European battery maker that France and Germany have been trying to create. It's an attempt to capture part of the industry, and especially the production of batteries for electric cars that right now happens mostly in Asia. But considering the market share of electric vehicles, and considering that when you produce an electric vehicle, you need fewer people in a factory, I don't think that it's possible to keep the same employment level in the auto industry, which is at around 400,000 jobs in France right now.
Yeah, 400,000 jobs. I think it's interesting. I suspect that other countries, particularly the UK and other manufacturing hubs in Europe, will be looking at France and hoping that some similar package comes their way. But you're right, does it really push the green agenda further forwards? This is what a lot of people are now starting to say, that this cash has to be used to further the green agenda. But is that really possible?
It depends what you call a green agenda. A big part of this cash aims to boost sales, right, and to incentivize customers to replace their old cars with new cars. And even if these new cars are electric or hybrid or low emission, it's not green to buy a new car. Anyways. And if you were speaking to pro-environment activists, they would probably tell you that the best way to cut emissions is to have fewer cars or replace them with bikes, electric bikes.
Yeah, possibly so. Yeah, exactly. And let's see how that debate continues. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. That's Bloomberg's Anya Nussbaum talking us through, of course, President Macron pledging this 8 billion euros to help the auto industry in France. But as Anya pointed out, it's 11 billion euros of sort of new money if you don't include the subsidy, the money going to Renault. So thank you so much for your time this morning. Anya Nussbaum there joining us live from Paris. Right, let's get over to Bloomberg's Leanne Gerrans, who's got all the latest in global news headlines. Good morning, Leanne.
Good morning, Caroline. Let's start in Hong Kong, where police have fired pepper sprayed hundreds of pro-democracy demonstrators today. It was the first time in months that protests have broken out. They are marching against China's new legislation that would give Beijing more control over Hong Kong. At least 180 people have been arrested. Now, here in the UK, pressure continues to mount on the Prime Minister Boris Johnson to fire his chief aide, Dominic Cummings.
Letter calling for Cummings to leave his post. Opinion polls showed Johnson's approval rating plunging 20 points since the revelations on Saturday, and a majority of people now think Cummings should lose his job. Johnson's government say they understand and regret the public anger at Cummings, but insisted he acted within the guidance. In London, Charles Capel, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
The coronavirus has had a profound impact on China's national security and development. That's according to President Xi Jinping in an address to military personnel during the National People's Congress in Beijing. Xi also said that the army needs to strengthen training of troops and war preparations.
The fight against the COVID-19 epidemic is a test for our army. The People's Liberation Army has followed the party's command, responded rapidly upon orders, and played an important role and made outstanding contributions to the fight against the epidemic. Facts have proved once again that the People's Army is always a heroic army that the party and the people can fully trust.
And for the first time, Twitter has added a fact-check label to President Trump's tweets. The president made some unsubstantiated claims about mail-in voting, and Twitter added links reading, quote, "Get the facts about mail-in ballots." The president responded with a tweet saying, "Twitter is completely stifling free speech, and I, as president, will not allow it to happen." Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Caroline.
Thank you so much, Leanne Gerrans with the world news. Now, coming up next on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, we're going to be talking about the fixed income markets, what is going on in Europe. We are joined by Stephen Major, who is the Global Head of Fixed Income Research at HSBC, talking about inflation. When does it come? I suppose the big question. How big a risk is deflation for Europe and the UK? We can talk about negative rates too with our guest next, Stephen Major from HSBC. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
1 in 3 adults has pre-diabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has pre-diabetes, with early diagnosis, pre-diabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its pre-diabetes awareness partners.
No company wants to be involved in an international dispute. But when disagreements arise, you need expertise at your side. Take a closer look at ICDR, the International Center for Dispute Resolution. Backed by the longevity and strength of the American Arbitration Association, the ICDR is the world's leading provider of cross-border dispute resolution services, handling more cases than any other institution. Find out why global expertise matters. Visit ICDR.org.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constant.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn. Ready for a one-of-a-kind look at the NFL? On the PFF NFL podcast, Steve Palazzolo and Sam Munson interpret the unique stats of Pro Football Focus to analyze the league, uncover secret superstars, and discuss which teams to watch out for in the next Super Bowl.
Let's talk some football. Let's do it, Steve. All sorts of stuff. We're going to do most improved defenses around the NFL. Solomon Wilcots, our very own. He went into some detail over at PFF.com. Most improved defenses around the
Search PFF NFL on TuneIn to listen. With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
Bergeron, he scores!
With game replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slap shot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter to Cunnin to Fiala, he scores!
And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic game replays to start listening.
Wondering what to play next? Want to know what other TuneIn listeners are listening to right now? Head to the trending section under Browse to explore the most popular stations and podcasts on TuneIn today. Millions of listeners like you can't be wrong.
Where do sports, culture, and basketball nostalgia collide? On their podcast, Knuckleheads, NBA veterans Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles sit down with athletes, musicians, and entertainers to get brutally honest, totally unguarded conversations about everything, from current events to untold stories from the golden era of sports.
Shaquille O'Neal. You know that, right? I tried to tip dunk all the free throw line one time.
Search Knuckleheads on TuneIn to listen.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the Body Slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown to a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling to listen.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
Yeah, but it's unique times. I think there's unique circumstances, and we're trying
to standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
It's headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning, I'm Caroline Hebger here in London with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. So in the markets, investors seem to be focused on the global recovery story today, not so much the clash over Hong Kong, the threat of US sanctions on Chinese officials. European equities are by 0.6%. Xetra gains 1.2% along with the FTSE 100. The most staggering gains are seen perhaps in the travel and tourism industry. TUI jumps 23%, Germany joining Spain in saying that it will open up tourism from July. So that's helped TUI as we see European equities gain for a second day in a row. Also a big gainer this morning, Renault up 8% with France offering some 8 billion euros total to prop up the auto industry in France. US futures also looking very positive as we are, 3 days of gains straight in Europe. US futures at the moment up by 0.9% on the S&P 500. The only sort of dark spot really was the Hang Seng down by 0.3%, so bearing the brunt of the anti-Beijing protests, the concerns there overnight in Asia. As for the bond markets this morning, Italian BTPs in focus because yesterday, of course, we saw the spread over bunds fall below 200 basis points for the first time since the middle of April. So there you see the power of the ECB. At the moment, we trade at 153 for Italian BTPs, negative 44 basis points for German bund yields, and US 10-year Treasury yields at 68 basis points. As for the FX space, a brief look there, up 0.1% for the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index. The euro is weak at 1%, trading currently at 1.0968 as we see a 1% drop for WTI crude futures and 0.2% lower for gold. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Leanne Gerrans with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning.
Good morning, Caroline, and thank you. The US is considering a range of sanctions to punish China's crackdown on Hong Kong. Sources tell us options on the table include asset freezes or visa restrictions on Chinese officials. President Donald Trump believes Hong Kong may lose its status as Asia's financial hub if the government proceeds with its new national security law. Now, here in the UK, women are more likely to have quit, lost their job, or been furloughed since the start of the lockdown. Research by the Institute for Fiscal Studies has also found mothers are taking on more childcare and housework responsibilities than fathers. It's warning of a potential increase in the gender pay gap once COVID-19 measures are indeed lifting. And finally, it's a defining moment for Elon Musk and SpaceX. If all goes well, a SpaceX rocket will launch this afternoon from Cape Canaveral, carrying 2 NASA astronauts. It'll be the first time humans have ever ridden into space aboard a commercial spacecraft. The capsule will dock with the International Space Station 19 hours later. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on QuickTake by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Matt.
Leanne, thanks very much. That is very cool. Looking forward to that launch. I believe, 9 p.m. UK time tonight?
I believe it is too, Matt. I don't know the exact times, but I think it is. And some people have been wondering if they can see it fly over the US. I've seen lots of people tweeting that. Will we be able to see it go over our heads? So there'll be lots of stargazers out there.
Have you heard an answer? Will Nathan Hager be able to see?
It depends on conditions. Everything depends on weather conditions.
I see.
I like that. That's a good general answer.
All right, so if it's a clear night, Nathan Hager, let's bring him in right now. He is hanging out on the banks of the Chesapeake Bay.
You know it.
Nathan, if it's clear, spring. I guess it's not night for you. It'll be, 5?
Yeah, it's going to be something like 4:30, 4:40 in the afternoon, something like that, I think. Hopefully the weather holds up for that. I mean, there's been some talk that there could be thunderstorms today. I don't want to jinx it or anything, but,
well,
there's
the weather
very little that can get me from not being excited about the first private launch of astronauts into space.
Yeah, I want to tune in, too. It's going to be 10 p.m. for me, which is bedtime, but I think I will stay up a little later. The weather is perfect for your radio program.
That's true. And we are looking poised for another strong open on Wall Street this morning, Matt, with the rate of infection slowing. Some of the hardest hit hotspots like New York and California laying out their plans to reopen. But we have seen how vulnerable this reopen rally can be with the prospect of new sanctions on China sparking that late day sell-off yesterday. We're going to have details on what's on the table, and we'll look at where markets go from here with Matt Maley of Miller Tabak. He's with us this morning. And we're also going to look at the potential risk of a new wave of infection as economies reopen with Professor Andy Pekosh of the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health making his weekly visit to the program with me and Karen Moscow. So hope you'll join us for it here on Bloomberg Daybreak Americas. T-minus 8 minutes, Matt.
Very cool. Matt Maley from the I don't want to say infamous, but from the Salomon Brothers. You know, I mean, he worked at Salomon Brothers back in the Liar's Poker days.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty awesome. And I love how he strives to separate himself from consensus. He has a great quote. It's better to fail at originality than to succeed in imitation.
Words to live by.
Excellent. Looking forward to hearing from him on your program. If you're tuned in on Sirius XM channel 119, you'll hear from Nathan Hager and Karen Moscow and Matt Maley from Miller Tabak. If you're listening on London DAB Digital in the city, you'll hear Bloomberg Surveillance with Francine Lacroix and Tom Keene.
Right, I'm inspired to reach high, to reach for the stars with our next guest, Stephen Major, who's Global Head of Fixed Income Research at HSBC. Great to have you with us, Stephen. I want to talk a bit about the impact of the coronavirus on the euro area. Probably somewhere between the ECB's medium and severe scenarios. That's what Christine Lagarde has said this morning, speaking in Frankfurt. And it comes, of course, as the Commission is preparing to present its coronavirus fund proposal later today. So the debate really about basically how to help and how much to help the pandemic hit European countries. What do you think is going to be the result of that? And is it going to fundamentally, help in terms of the economic recovery story that we're looking at the moment?
Yeah, so Madame Lagarde's comments were quite interesting this morning. One of the things she also said was it's very likely that the mild scenario is out of date. So when she said we're probably somewhere between mild and severe, that means we're probably at severe at a minimum. My suspicion is that the ECB has been racing to catch up with the reality of what's happened. And I don't mean to be critical, because it's very difficult for anyone to judge what's happening in such unprecedented circumstances. As regards the PEP, then, yeah, sure, they're going to do more. It's fairly open-ended. I think the idea that they stop has quickly gone out of the window, so they're going to add to it. They're not going to stop the reinvestment. It's got a great deal of flexibility. It's not constrained like the PSPP, for example. So that keeps things going. But in the background, the big one is what's happening at the European Commission. I'm talking here about the stability bonds or the recovery fund, and this is a game changer. It's the steps that matter. It's a real game changer, because it's a step towards debt mutualization. And that's the kind of thing that the GCC in Germany didn't like. But it's the kind of thing that has to happen. Because if it doesn't happen in this controlled fashion, it's kind of happening anyway through the ECB's balance sheet over time. So to me, that's the big story. It's what's happening at the government level.
Stephen, everyone knows what we mean now when we say it could be a Hamilton moment because of Lin-Manuel Miranda. Yeah. But I prefer the Ron Chernow tome on Alexander Hamilton. Could this be the beginning of a European takeover by Brussels?
Well, I believe that there are steps in that direction, yes, Matt. It would be interesting to do a study of how many articles have been published on Bloomberg and elsewhere which focus on the risks of default or breakup, compared to the number of articles on further deepening and steps towards fiscal union debt mutualization. Because you probably know the answer. I guess it's 10 to 1. So if people are all focusing on one thing at the same time, then the market can be out of balance. And it's no coincidence that Italian BTPs are doing quite well.
Yeah.
And the spread is slowly grinding in. It's also no coincidence that German bond yields have not gone any lower. They seem to have established a floor in the last few months. If you think about the excitement of the last, if you want to call it anything, excitement in bond markets in the last few months, obviously big rally in the US and spreads went out, then they came back in. But the bonds have been doing nothing. I mean the bond market is actually cheapening up a bit. So what matters is in the background, is that the probability of steps towards debt mutualization has increased. And markets are all about pricing probabilities. And so you put a weight on a scenario, and that weighting on the mutualization scenario is going up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're 153 for Italian BTPs. They moved significantly yesterday. The spread narrowing. Stephen Major, thank you so much for joining us, Global Head of Fixed Income Research at HSBC. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. This is Bloomberg.
This is a message from the government. There is new guidance to help businesses and employees who cannot work from home be COVID-19 secure at work. The advice will help you conduct a risk assessment, put social distancing measures in place, improve hygiene and cleaning in the workplace, and look after the well-being of your employees. Every workplace is different. Use the guidance to make your business COVID-19 secure. Access the support you need at gov.uk/working safely. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the Uswitch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
Picture in your mind a stylish Audi with striking LED headlights, sporty alloy wheels, and some of our most advanced features, including a 10-inch digital cockpit and smart assistance systems like lane departure warning. Picture what that Audi looks like. Now think smaller. The Audi A1. It's not a small car, it's a small Audi. Visit audi.co.uk. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Wednesday, May 27th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
The reopen rally continues. U.S. futures gain as officials relax lockdowns.
Unrest takes hold in Hong Kong. Police fire pepper spray as protests in the city gather steam.
And sanctions targeting China. The White House considers penalties tied to Beijing's crackdown on Hong Kong.
New York Governor Cuomo meets with President Trump today, plus New Jersey's governor says outdoor graduations will be allowed in July. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. The NHL regular season is over. The Rangers and Islanders will be in the playoffs in July. Baseball made its economic proposal to the players.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
And I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak brought to you by SEI. Crises and challenges highlight the power of partnership and character. Work for the common good, one community, SEI. Go to SEIC.com/banks.
U.S. futures are pointing to a third straight day of gains. It is 5:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 28 points, Dow futures up 266, NASDAQ futures up 78. The DAX in Germany's up 1.25%, CAC in Paris up 1.5%, and the FTSE 100 up 1.2%. Nikkei 225 in Japan gained 0.7%, and the Hang Seng in Hong Kong was down 1/3%. 10-year Treasury up 4/30 seconds, yield 0.68%. The yield on the 2-year 0.17%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.7% or 23 cents at $34.11 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.7% or $12.70 at $17.15.50 an ounce. The euro 1.0955 against the dollar. The yen 107.65. Nathan.
Right, Karen, the gains in U.S. futures we're seeing this morning come as the push to reopen continues and U.S. coronavirus cases continue to slow. For the very latest, we're joined live by Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
Nathan, good morning. Data show daily COVID-19 cases across the country rising at the slowest pace since March, just 1.1%. That's down from last week's 1.4% rate. In New York, hospitalizations and deaths reached the lowest level since the outbreak began. Meantime, the Trump administration is targeting an aggressive expansion of testing. It wants to hit 13 million tests this month. With 5 days left in May, it's currently 4.5 million short of that goal. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is turning his attention to reopening New York City.
We're going to turn the page on COVID-19, and we're going to start focusing on reopening and how we reopen and how smart we are in reopening.
As hospitalizations head lower, New York Mayor Bill de Blasio is targeting the first half of June to restart business in the city, and that includes extra safety measures.
We're thinking about all the pieces. How do people come back to work? What kind of precautions need to be in place? How do we monitor it? How do we inspect it? How do we make sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing?
De Blasio says the city has hired 1,700 contact tracers. A phase 1 reopening will likely include construction, manufacturing, and curbside pickup for retailers.
In California, at least 47 counties have begun reopening. Even barbershops and salons in those regions are getting back to work as Governor Gavin Newsom sees infections holding steady. Here with details is Ed Baxter in our Bloomberg 960 newsroom in San Francisco.
Governor Newsom says stabilization in case numbers is the key.
Ultimately, we want to see them go down, but we are holding steady in that positivity rate, and that's encouraging news.
California has 58 counties, and the governor says individual guidelines and testing are on the state's website, but that on a regional basis, there is movement being made back into manufacturing and retail. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, and thank you. Across the Pacific, unrest is brewing again in Hong Kong. Police fired pepper spray downtown as protesters hit the street to oppose China's increased control over the city. We get more from Bloomberg's Karen Lee in Hong Kong.
This is a return to a lot of the unrest that we saw last summer, and police have arrested at least 16 people so far today. And for a lot of people here, we're using today to get an idea of how big the protest movement could get as it seems to be resurging. Are we going to see things like we saw last summer on that scale, or is it going to be smaller, more scattered? So we're really looking at today as a bit of an indicator.
And demonstrations are being organized against China's plan to impose broad national security measures in Hong Kong. Hundreds have gathered to demonstrate in the city's central shopping hub. There's been a heavy police presence, and that's dispersed protesters in other areas across the city.
The White House is watching those protests closely. Now sources tell us it's considering sanctions on China tied to the crackdown on Hong Kong. For the very latest on that front, we turn to Bloomberg's Saleha Mosin in Washington.
The Treasury Department could impose controls on transactions and freeze assets of Chinese officials, businesses, and financial institutions for implementing the new national security law that is curtailing the rights and freedoms of Hong Kong citizens. So far, we know that the Trump administration is considering the range of sanctions. They have not come to any decision whether to do that yet.
Meantime, the House is set to pass a different set of legislation sanctioning Chinese officials for human rights abuses against Muslims. The measure passed the Senate with unanimous consent. It also has broad support in the House. That vote is set for today.
Meantime, President Trump is also taking aim at Twitter. For the first time, the social network added a fact-check label to the president's tweets after he made unsubstantiated claims about mail-in voting. Twitter added a link reading, quote, "Get the facts about mail-in ballots." President Trump did not take the move lightly. He responded with a tweet saying, "Twitter is completely stifling free speech, and I, as president, will not allow it to happen."
Turning to Europe now, we get details today on plans to stem the economic fallout from the pandemic. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is scheduled to release a recovery fund proposal just over 3 hours from now. Here with details is Bloomberg's Maria Tadeo in Brussels.
We know already that von der Leyen hinted at trillions of euros, not billions. And they also will want to know the composition. Are we going to see grants? Are we going to see loans? And finally, if we do see the European Commission tap markets for maybe billions of euros, the market is going to want to know how is this going to be packaged? How are these bonds going to hit the market?
France and Germany have been pushing for $500 million in aid. Austria, Denmark, Sweden, and the Netherlands have so far opposed the measure. S&P futures higher by 26 points. Dow futures up 255. NASDAQ futures a gain of 71 points. Straight ahead, the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg. And at 5:07 on Wall Street, we bring in Michael Barr for a check of what else is going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo meets with President Trump today to discuss infrastructure. Cuomo outlined several infrastructure projects he'd like his state to tackle in partnership with the federal government.
There is no better time to build than right now. You need to restart the economy. You need to create jobs. And you need to renew and repair this country's economy and its infrastructure. Now is the time to do it.
The projects include a new Penn station, a train link to LaGuardia Airport, rebuilding train tunnels under the Hudson, and expanding the 2nd Avenue subway. Long Island will officially start the first phase of reopening its economy today. It comes after a shutdown of non-essential businesses for more than 2 months due to the coronavirus pandemic. New York City is seeking authority to borrow possibly as much as $7 billion if necessary to make up for the revenue lost because of the pandemic. It calls for the city's Transitional Finance Authority to issue debt to make up for the projected loss through mid-2021. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says he will unveil a plan today that will allow outdoor in-person graduations this summer with limits.
To the class of 2020, I am proud to say that you will have your opportunity to join with your classmates and families to celebrate your graduation.
Murphy says it will begin July 6th. A judge who suggested that a woman seeking a restraining order could close her legs to prevent a sexual assault was removed from the bench by the New Jersey Supreme Court. State Superior Court Judge John Russo was also permanently barred from presiding over a courtroom. Joe Biden says President Trump is a fool who is stoking deaths for suggesting that wearing a mask in public to combat the spread of COVID-19 is anything other than a sign of leadership. The presumptive Democratic presidential nominee also talked about President Trump attacking former President Barack Obama.
I was talking to a friend of mine today, a leader in the African-American community. And I said, why is he going after Barack? He said, because it stirs up his base. Barack's a black man. I don't know what that's the reason, but all of a sudden, Barack, most popular guy out there, and he's attacking Barack. What's that all about?
Biden spoke to CNN. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Thank you, Michael. Coming up to 5:10 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Good morning, John Stashar.
Good morning, Nathan. The NHL regular season is now officially over. Let the Stanley Cup playoffs begin. Commissioner Gary Bettman says it's what everyone wants.
Our fans are telling us in overwhelming numbers that they want us to complete the season, if at all possible. And our players and our teams are clear that they want to play and bring the season to its rightful conclusion.
Bettman announced a 24-team playoff field. The Rangers and Islanders will be part of it, not the Devils. Rangers, who would not have made it if they hadn't expanded the field, will face Carolina in the first round. Not known yet if that'll be a best of 5 or 7. The Islanders will face Florida, a couple of teams who were slumping back when there was still hockey. Where the games will be played, not yet known. There will be 2 hub cities, one for each conference. Vegas seen as the heavy favorite to land the West games, not known about the East. Training camp will begin no later than July 1st, so expect games sometime mid to late July, pending they get final clearance that this can be done safely. As for baseball, the reaction by the union to the economic proposal made to them by the owners, not good. One player using the word disgusting. The Mets' Marcus Stroman said this season doesn't look promising. Owners proposing a sliding scale where the higher-paid players will see their salaries cut the most. It could lead to division among players. Two sides need to get this done if they're going to be able to play ball. The Jets just got Joe Flacco to be their backup quarterback, but he says coming off surgery, he won't be ready to play in Week 1. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
And John, another MLB team is cutting jobs due to the pandemic. The Oakland A's are placing scouts and other front office employees on furlough and suspending pay for minor leaguers and cutting salaries for executives. The A's will continue to pay health care, 401k, and pension costs for employees. S&P futures higher by 27 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's BABBEL.com.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, makes innovation happen. NJIT faculty mentored Christoph Camacho when he was a student, helping him co-found a startup and patent a device that uses drone technology for reforestation and to collect valuable data for land management.
I founded Paratrees back in 2016, taking what I learned from my research at NJIT and migrating it to a startup. Our technology is to really enhance land management operations, so we work very closely with land management companies. So we have a drone that performs precision reforestation, and we do storm damage assessment, having access to drones that can collect data so it's much faster. And what is more important, we help them drive management decisions. NJIT has been there every step of the way, going full force with my company.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
And picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Hairbands to kids.
Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs.
Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen. You can do your bit by working from home if you can. Avoid public transport and walk or cycle wherever possible. We're increasing the number of buses, trains and tubes we run, but they may still be busy during peak hours. If you must use public transport, avoid early mornings between 5:45 and 8:15 and evenings between 4 and 5:30. This will help those who must travel at this time to do so safely. Search TfL Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Max is dreaming of riding a giant chameleon whilst fighting a clan of ninjas. But in reality, he's helping fight COVID-19 in his sleep. Like thousands of others, he's joined the Dream Team. By using the Dream Lab app, they're helping scientists speed up the search for potential treatments.
I'll fight you.
You go, Max. Search Vodafone Dream Lab and join the Dream Team tonight.
Dreamlab app is owned by Vodafone Foundation, an independent charity. Registration number 1089625. Full terms at vodafone.co.uk/dreamlab.
We're all in uncharted territory looking for ways to support our communities. At Dell Technologies, we're making sure small businesses have the right tech solutions. Dell Technologies advisors are here for you, helping small businesses stay connected and productive while working remotely with Windows 10 Pro and Microsoft Teams. We're standing by you every step of the way. Call us today on 0800 169 1745. That's 0800 169 1745.
E. Stroud Watts.
Well, Hong Kong is bracing for what could be its biggest day of protest in months, with pro-democracy groups calling for a general strike against China's plans to impose a national security law. Opponents fear it will curtail essential freedoms, and the US says it casts doubt on Hong Kong's future. We're joined now by the former Hong Kong Justice Secretary, Elsie Leung. So isn't there a real concern that Hong Kong's institutions and Hong Kong people and foreign investors are looking to be undermined if this goes through?
No, I don't think so, because in the first paragraph, first article of the draft decision, which is before the National People's Congress, it is stated that the Central People's Government will unswervingly, fully and faithfully implement the principles of one country, two systems, Hong Kong people governing Hong Kong, and a high degree of autonomy. Now, which country does not have laws concerning protection for the protection of national security? I think in the States they have, in Britain they have, and it is natural that there should be a national security law. Now, in Hong Kong, the rights and the freedom of citizens are well protected by the basic law, as well as our Hong Kong Bill of Rights Ordinance.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Stocks advancing in Europe along with U.S. stock index futures as investors look past simmering tensions between Washington and Beijing and focus on progress in relaxing lockdowns. Oil is slipping, treasuries and the dollar edging higher. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 29 points, Dow futures up 285, NASDAQ futures up 74. The DAX in Germany is up 1.5%. 10-year treasury up 230 seconds, yield 0.69%. The yield on the 2-year 0.17%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.8% or 28 cents at $34.07 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.8% or $13.30 at $17.14.90 an ounce. The euro 1.0949 against the dollar. British pound 1.2287, and the yen is at 107.68. And the S&P 500 is up 34% from its March 23rd lows. Today, the Federal Reserve releases its beige book at 2 o'clock Wall Street time, and that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. U.S. coronavirus cases continue to slow. Bloomberg's John Tucker in New York has more in this live report.
And Michael, coronavirus cases in the U.S. increased 1.1% as compared to the same time yesterday. That's the slowest daily increase since March. Deaths in the U.S. now stand at over 98,000. New York saw its fewest new hospitalizations and fatalities since the outbreak began. There were 73 deaths. That's down from a high last month of nearly 800. And the Trump administration has released coronavirus testing targets for May, an aggressive expansion that would have some states doubling and quadrupling the number they had done through late April. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thank you, John. President Donald Trump plans to travel to Florida to watch today's launch of SpaceX's manned test mission to the International Space Station. The launch will mark the first time NASA astronauts have blasted off from U.S. soil since the end of the Space Shuttle program in 2011. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 27 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thanks. We're coming up to 5:20 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak, and Matt Maley's with us now, Chief Market Strategist at Miller Tabak. Well, it seems like it's all systems go for a rally on Wall Street with optimism over economies reopening. Do you see that fueling a breakout of the range that equities have been in the last few weeks, Matt?
Well, I mean, we'll have to see. I mean, yesterday we saw that break of the 3,000 level on the S&P and the 200-day moving average that everybody has been talking about. And, of course, by the end of the day, it came back down. And so if we get another one of those today, when the futures are looking like they're going to break it again, if we come back down, that failure might cause the market to pull back a little bit. And the reason why I highlight that, at least over the near term, is this whole thing with what's going on in Hong Kong. That's is not going to to get any better. It doesn't seem to me anyway, anytime soon. And it probably gives the market a good excuse to take a breather over the near term, especially since we have so much uncertainty surrounding any kind of vaccine or how quickly the economy is going to bounce back.
Yeah, a couple of uncertainties there between the vaccine and China tensions. You say you don't see that getting any better anytime soon. What makes you say that?
Well, I mean, it just seems to me fairly obvious that China definitely wants to crack down and take full control of Hong Kong. They stepped away late last year and early this year. Now they're coming back in. I hate to say it, but they're using this coronavirus, this global healthcare issue, to hopefully deflect attention while they're doing it. But it became obvious yesterday by what Congress did, or at least started to do, that we're not going to sit idly by and watch that take place. So as the tensions grow with China, I think that eventually is going to have an impact on the stock market.
But it does seem as though the markets, other than late yesterday, weren't giving it much attention in terms of the tensions with China. What do you think is going to bring that to the fore for markets?
Well, we'll have to see what happens as these tensions rise. But it's hard to know exactly what will happen because we saw the same thing with the coronavirus back in January and in first half of February, where we completely ignored what was going on with the coronavirus and possible shut down the economy. And then all of a sudden, it didn't matter until it did. And so all of a sudden it did. So it's hard to pinpoint an exact catalyst. And again, I'm not saying that this Hong Kong situation will create a 30% decline in the market, but it certainly could cause a pullback, especially given how far we've rallied over a very short period of time.
Despite all these headwinds, Matt, we did hear from Jamie Dimon yesterday saying he sees fairly good odds that we could have a fast recovery in the third quarter. Is that something you're looking at as well?
Well, it's funny. There's two things that I'm watching very closely that are interesting. And on the one hand, I really like them, and there's one thing that concerns me. But number one is the housing stocks. We saw the new home sales yesterday came in much. They were almost flat, but much better than expected. And we sort of read on Bloomberg about what's going on in New York with all the young families moving out of the city and bringing their families out of the city. Anecdotally, we're definitely seeing that here in Boston as well. So if the housing sector, which is incredibly important to the economy, holds up well, that's going to be positive. The other thing I'd note, which is kind of interesting, is that the Dow Jones Wilshire Trucking Index, a sub-index of the transportation index, hit a new all-time high yesterday. Can you believe that? I mean, the one thing that concerns me is that is our economy really going to bounce back that fast that we're getting new all-time highs for the truckers? So I think I'm a little worried that that's getting ahead of itself. But at the same time, we have two economically sensitive indexes that are acting very, very well. So even though I've been very cautious about the economy, it's something that we have to watch because it could break out. The one thing I'd feel a little bit better about the whole thing, though, is if Jamie Dimon announced he was buying back some of this J.P. Morgan stock that, like he did in 2016, that kind of confirmed his real stance on things.
So in our last 30 seconds here, where do you see equities going into the second half?
Well, I think right now on a near-term basis, the market's getting ahead of itself. We break above 3,000, that gives us good momentum. But I just think that the unemployment rate is going to settle at a level, even though it's going to be much lower than where it is right now. It's going to still be around 10%. I think it's hard for the economy to grow to a degree that will help the stock market rally a lot more than it already has. So I think we look for a little bit of pullback right now.
Always good getting your take, Matt. Good talking with you this morning. Matt Maley, Chief Market Strategist at Miller Tabak. And looking at the futures contracts this morning, the rally continues. S&P futures up 33 points. Dow futures up 325. NASDAQ futures up 80 points. Stay with us. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak. Good morning.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Union workers at Boeing are bracing for bad news as soon as this week. Job cuts that could see 15 to 20% of white-collar engineering jobs in Washington State and Southern California disappear. That's according to the Puget Sound Business Journal. About 1,300 union workers have already applied to take voluntary buyouts. But the CEO of one of the nation's biggest banks thinks there are pretty good odds of a fast economic rebound from the pandemic. So says J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon, thanks to government help and the strength of the American consumer. The head of the European Central Bank is not so optimistic. Christine Lagarde thinks the European economy will shrink somewhere between 8 and 12%. Wall Street, however, is going with optimism, focusing on progress and relaxing lockdowns. So stock futures are higher again today. S&P futures up 27, NASDAQ futures 71, Dow futures up another 251 points. Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Imagine. Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
Get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Hairbands to kids.
Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs.
Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen. You can do your bit by working from home if you can. Avoid public transport and walk or cycle wherever possible. We're increasing the number of buses, trains and tubes we run, but they may still be busy during peak hours. If you must use public transport, avoid early mornings between 5:45 and 8:15 and evenings between 4 and 5:30. This will help those who must travel at this time to do so safely. Search TfL Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
We're all in uncharted territory looking for ways to support our communities. At Dell Technologies, we're making sure small businesses have the right tech solutions. Dell Technologies advisors are here for you, helping small businesses stay connected and productive while working remotely with Windows 10 Pro and Microsoft Teams. We're standing by you every step of the way. Call us today on 0800 169 1745. That's 0800 169 1745.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
Yeah, but it's unique times. I think there's unique circumstances, and we're trying to
standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time. We actually, in terms of like active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy. Pick number one, not only.
Catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Broker Studio in New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It's 5:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures are gaining as lockdown measures ease across the country and coronavirus cases continue to slow. For the latest, we're joined live by Bloomberg's John Tucker. John, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. Data show daily COVID-19 cases rising at the slowest pace since March, just 1.1%. Compare that to the 1.4% rate from the prior week. In New York State, hospitalizations and deaths reached the lowest level since the outbreak began. In New York City, Mayor Bill de Blasio is targeting the first half of June to restart business. Long Island is set to open today. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thanks. Let's turn to Hong Kong now, where unrest is brewing again today. Police fired pepper spray downtown as demonstrators hit the streets to oppose China's increased control over the city. Hundreds gathered in the city's central shopping hub, though there has been a heavy police presence that's dispersed demonstrators in other areas across the city.
The White House is watching those protests closely. Now sources tell us it's considering sanctions on China tied to the crackdown. Bloomberg's Karen Lee has details from Hong Kong.
The Treasury Department could impose controls on transactions and freeze the assets of some Chinese officials and businesses because they implemented a new national security law here in Hong Kong that could curtail the rights and freedoms of Hong Kong citizens. We're also reporting that other measures under consideration by the Trump administration include visa restrictions for Communist Party officials.
Meantime, the House is set to pass a different set of legislation sanctioning Chinese officials for human rights abuse against Muslims. The measure passed the Senate with unanimous consent and also has broad support in the House. That vote is set for today.
Meantime, President Trump is also targeting Twitter. For the first time, the social network added a fact-check label to the president's tweets after he made unsubstantiated claims about mail-in voting. Twitter added links reading, quote, "Get the facts about mail-in ballots." President Trump didn't take that move lightly. He responded on Twitter saying, quote, "Twitter is completely stifling free speech, and I, as president, will not allow it to happen."
And in Europe, we have plans to stem the economic fallout from the pandemic. The European Commission is out with a proposal to issue 500 billion euros in joint debt. It's part of an EU virus recovery fund totaling 750 billion euros to aid nations in the euro area. Futures this morning, again on the rise, up 36 points. Dow futures up 340. The NASDAQ futures are up 83. 10-year Treasury, little change, yield 0.69%. And NYMEX crude oil is down 0.7%. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
Okay, Karen, thanks. It's 5:33 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr is here with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says he will travel to Washington to meet with President Donald Trump and plan to discuss major investments in infrastructure as a way to jumpstart a U.S. economy devastated by the coronavirus pandemic. During the briefing, Cuomo explained his plan for LaGuardia Airport.
Accelerating LaGuardia Airport, which is going to be the first new airport in this nation in 25 years. Traffic is low, passenger volume is lower. Let's accelerate that construction now.
Cuomo also says he will talk with the president about renovation and expansion of Penn Station in New York City. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says his state is ready to figure out how outdoor graduation ceremonies could happen over the summer. Murphy says more guidance will be released today.
To allow for outdoor graduation ceremonies to celebrate our students' accomplishments starting July 6th. This guidance will include social distancing requirements and other necessary health and safety measures.
COVID-19 cases in New Jersey have been on a downward trend, although the state hasn't seen 14 days of consecutive downward numbers for all COVID-19 metrics. Monday's video of an altercation between a white female executive and a black man in Central Park went viral almost immediately. Now the woman, Amy Cooper, was fired from her job at Franklin Templeton. Cooper is seen calling New York police on her mobile phone saying there's an African-American man threatening her in Central Park.
Please don't come close to me.
Please take your phone off.
Please don't come close to me.
I'm taking a picture and calling the cops.
Please call the cops. Please call the cops.
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Please tell them whatever you like.
The man, Christian Cooper, had earlier asked her to leash her dog in the wooded area of the park, which is required. She later told the news station that she is sorry for what happened. Protests were held in Minneapolis after an unarmed black man died following his arrest. George Floyd was pinned to the ground by a police officer who had his knee on Floyd's neck. 4 police officers have been fired. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thank you. It's 5:35 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Sports Update with John Stashauer.
Nathan, after a couple of months of speculation, we finally heard from a commissioner with a definite plan for resuming the season. Gary Bettman says the NHL will not have any more regular season games. There'll be a 2014 playoff starting sometime in July at 2 hub cities, which 2 he was not yet ready to say. Vegas is seen as a favorite to land at least the West games. The top 4 teams in each conference will play round-robin games to determine top 4 seeding. The other 8 will face off in either a best of 5 or 7. The Rangers will play the Carolina Hurricanes. The Islanders will take on the Florida Panthers. The Devils, one of 7 teams not in the playoffs. They'll be in the draft lottery. But Bettman warns none of this is his top priority.
I want to make clear that the health and safety of our players, coaches, essential support staff, and our communities are paramount. While nothing is without risk, ensuring health and safety has been central to all of our planning so far and will remain so.
NHL says it is still hopeful next season will have the full 82 games. Baseball's pitch to the union regarding the economics of a return, featured by a sliding scale of reduced salaries where the highest paid players would see their pay cut the most. Yankee ace Garrett Cole just signed for $36 million a year. He'd make roughly $8 million. There are 12 who make $30 million or more, but most make less than $1 million. Early reaction from players on this proposal, not positive. Ryder Cup still on for late September in Wisconsin. Rory McIlroy says it should be put off until 2021. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
Thanks, John. It's 5:37 on Wall Street. Time for the Tri-State Business Report with Bloomberg's Ed Corey.
New York City is seeking authority to borrow possibly as much as $7 billion if needed to make up for the revenue lost because of the coronavirus pandemic. The city's Office of Management and Budget estimates New York will lose at least $7.4 billion in revenue through June of 2021. Secaucus-based Quest Diagnostics is offering services to big employers geared at getting their workers back to the job safely. That includes testing for the coronavirus, analytics to monitor symptoms and hotspots, and services like temperature monitoring. A New York Times Siena College Research Institute poll found that theater goers who are hesitant to return worry that the people around them won't be following the rules. The biggest concern among those who are worried about going to the theater, people who might show up without masks or ignore social distancing. That's your Bloomberg Tri-State Business Report. I'm Ed Corey.
All right, Ed, thanks. It's 5:38 on Wall Street. Bloomberg Radio is on the air from San Francisco to New York, London to Hong Kong. Let's check in with our global news team for some of the top stories heard on our 300 affiliate radio stations around the world.
I'm Courtney Donahoe on KFAB in Omaha. Slimmer hogs are the latest sign that meat shortages are easing.
I'm Steve Podoskin on KNX in Los Angeles. We're talking about Tesla cutting the prices of some of its cars to boost demand.
I'm Caroline Hepke on Bloomberg DAB Digital Radio in London. We're reporting on the growing number of Conservative MPs calling for Boris Johnson's main advisor to be sacked.
I'm Jeff Bellinger, and on WIOD in Miami, I'm reporting Walt Disney and SeaWorld are set to present plans for reopening their Florida theme parks.
I'm Ed Corey on WWJ in Detroit. I'm reporting General Motors is recalling third-shift workers at its Spring Hill, Tennessee assembly plant.
And those are some of the stories our 2,700 Bloomberg journalists and analysts are working on this morning around the world. Here are a few more. Christine Lagarde says the euro area economy is facing a contraction in line with the bank's more pessimistic forecasts. The European Central Bank president says output in the Eurozone is likely to shrink between 8 to 12%. Boeing will unveil job cuts to its Seattle area engineering ranks this week. Layoff notices will go out Friday. Union officials say about 1,300 of their 18,000 members were accepted for buyouts. Boeing warned last month it would need to cut about 10% of its workforce. And finally, Bloomberg News has learned Amazon is in talks to buy the driverless vehicle startup Zoox. A deal would accelerate Amazon's automation efforts, and we're told the price is unlikely to be less than the $1 billion Zoox has already raised. It's coming up to 5:40 on Wall Street now, and the latest edition of Bloomberg Business Week is online with the cover on President Trump's political gamble to reopen the economy. Terminal customers can receive a complimentary subscription at MAG Go. And listen to Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly right here on Bloomberg Radio, or watch it on YouTube weekdays from 2 to 6 p.m. Wall Street time. Get global business, finance, and tech news on your TV, computer, or mobile device. Just visit youtube.com and search Bloomberg Global News. And a reminder to tune in later this morning for an interview with New York Fed President John Williams. He sits down with Bloomberg Surveillance at 9:30 a.m. Wall Street time. You can listen to it on Bloomberg Radio and watch it on Bloomberg Television. This is Bloomberg.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Debbie Hart is president of BioNJ, which represents the interests of more than 400 New Jersey-based biotech companies. She's also a strong voice in the biotech sector, supporting research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology. She sees NJIT as a valuable partner in attracting venture capital and biotech startups to the Garden State.
So the number one reason the companies come here to New Jersey for the biotech industry is for our talent. We estimate that there were about 30 biotech companies in the early 90s in New Jersey, about 80 in 1998. Today there are more than 400. And that growth continues, and it's come from every possible angle. Other countries, other states, they've spun out of our academic institutions as well as our biotech and our pharma companies, and we expect that growth to continue long into the future. And NJIT is a pipeline for talent, for companies, for entrepreneurs to do that important work.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report.
This is a message from the government. There is new guidance to help businesses and employees who cannot work from home be COVID-19 secure at work. The advice will help you conduct a risk assessment, put social distancing measures in place, improve hygiene and cleaning in the workplace, and look after the well-being of your employees. Every workplace is different. Use the guidance to make your business COVID-19 secure. Access the support you need at gov.uk/working safely. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Hairbands to kids.
Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs. Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
We're all in uncharted territory looking for ways to support our communities. At Dell Technologies, we're making sure small businesses have the right tech solutions. Dell Technologies advisors are here for you, helping small businesses stay connected and productive while working remotely. With Windows 10 Pro and Microsoft Teams, we're standing by you every step of the way. Call us today on 0800 169 1745. That's 0800 169 1745.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
On air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update. Special report, coronavirus update. Mr. Cuomo goes to Washington to urge President Trump to stimulate the economy as the nation faces financial woes.
When Andrew Cuomo heads to Washington today, he'll be delivering a message to the White House and Capitol Hill.
Supercharge the reopening.
New York's governor thinks the bounce back will not be quick, and he wants the federal government to make up for that by stimulating the economy with targeted investments.
If there's ever a time to actually take on this overdue need of major infrastructure construction, now is the time.
Cuomo said it's the perfect time to start and accelerate infrastructure projects because volume is down and it would be less disruptive. Steve Kastenbaum, New York.
Not maintaining social distancing today, 2 NASA astronauts bound for the International Space Station. The pair are set to leave Earth and a precautionary coronavirus quarantine aboard a SpaceX rocket. I'm John Trout.
Why all the top-tier experts? Because business is not a magic trick.
Give us a sense of the economic backdrop.
Bloomberg Markets.
Which financial records are these?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. European stocks and U.S. stock index futures are extending their advance as investors look past fresh tension between Washington and Beijing and focus on progress in relaxing lockdowns and reopening economies. Crude oil is slipping. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 37 points this morning. Dow futures up 352. NASDAQ futures up 90. The DAX in Germany's up 1.6%. 10-year Treasury up 1/32, yield 0.69%. The yield on the 2-year 0.17%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.6% or 19 cents at $34.16 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.6% or $11.10 at $17.10 an ounce. The euro 1.1005 against the dollar. British pound 1.2329, and the yen is at 107.66. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Thank you very much, Karen. President Donald Trump plans to travel to Florida today to watch the launch of SpaceX's manned test mission to the International Space Station. The launch will mark the first time NASA astronauts have blasted off from U.S. soil since the end of the Space Shuttle program in 2011. NASA says astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken are scheduled to arrive at the space station on May 28th. Republicans in the House mounted a legal challenge to a proxy voting procedure Democrats pushed through this month for colleagues who are in quarantine or otherwise housebound during the coronavirus pandemic. The first proxy votes are set to be cast this week when the House considers several pieces of legislation, including modifications to a popular loan program for small businesses and an extension of the federal government surveillance authority. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John.
Michael, thank you. 5:49 on Wall Street. We're live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Good morning. I'm John Tucker. Hong Kong is returning to unrest, largely unseen since last year. The protests are opposition to China's increasing control over the city. It's also the backdrop for increasing tensions between the U.S. and China. And joining us now from Hong Kong, Bloomberg's Rishad Salamat. Rish, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it. Pro-democracy advocates called for this strike today, the general strike. What sort of turnout has there been?
John, there were hundreds rather than thousands, and at the moment, last time I just saw about an hour ago, just a few small groups of protesters remaining on the streets of the territory. Officers earlier firing pepper spray projectiles and arresting nearly 300 people, about 290 in and as you said, in a return to unrest largely seen before. We knew this was coming. This general strike was called by student groups and trade unions. So they'd called for protests to oppose this China-backed national security legislation, which would mean that people could be arrested in the territory for any crimes involved with sedition, secession, and perhaps some vague items as well. And that's the point. It is quite vague what may well be in this law finally. Now, of course, we knew it was going to come today. It is the chief executive, Carrie Lam's birthday, and those bodies had called out to celebrate the occasion and celebrate it with pro-democracy rallies. They were doing that, certainly, but celebrate may not be the word quite here. And we've just seen this unrest. We haven't seen this since last year, really, and part of that, of course, has been down to the COVID-19 lockdown. People calling for the end of Chinese rule over the city, and they want independence. That's certainly something that the Chinese would never countenance. The new legislation, according to them, would be the end of Hong Kong as we know it, and at the minimum, the end of one country, two systems. And that's essentially what they have been really, at the moment, saying that this legislation is about. Carrie Lam has been at pains to defend the security measures. Some don't believe her, some do. She said it was untrue that the new measures would ban street protests and pledged that Hong Kong's freedoms would be preserved. Even Hong Kong's richest tycoon, Li Ka-shing, defended the Beijing-backed law. Previously, he'd been seen as wavering on the issue, and now said that perhaps we need not over-interpret it, and that perhaps it is within each and every nation's sovereign right to address its national security concerns here. John?
Yeah, with Li Ka-shing and Carrie Lam defending the new law, what kind of an impact has that had? Has that reduced the number of people who've shown up on the streets as well?
Perhaps, but we also know that the U.S.-China relations are fraught by this. We also know that people haven't turned up on the streets perhaps in so many numbers as they have done in the past because of the sheer volume of the number of police officers on the streets themselves. Now, I just want to get to the U.S. because the geopolitical side of things here, John, because the U.S. is considering a range of sanctions to punish China for this crackdown. People we've been talking to who don't want to be named say that top of the agenda is the Trump administration weighing up whether or not to declare the former colony as someplace which has lost its autonomy from Beijing. The debate in Washington seeming to be about a narrow approach, such as sanctioning individuals or businesses involved who've been curtailing Hong Kong's autonomy. The states could, of course, react and enact the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. It requires the Secretary of State to certify whether Hong Kong continues to warrant special treatment. Now, if employed, the act could simply render treatment of Hong Kong as just the same as any other Chinese city here as well, John. So perhaps it's not a huge leap in imagination with the way these two sides are going at each other, that the foreign minister comments over the weekend suggesting that the U.S. is pushing the relations to a new Cold War. Perhaps that is getting a ring of truth at the moment. That's at least some of the reaction.
All right, Rish, thanks very much. We appreciate it. Bloomberg's Rishad Salama joining us from Hong Kong. China also warning that it would retaliate if the U.S. put sanctions on the country or interfered in its affairs. Thanks very much, Rishad. Karen, back to you.
All right, John, thank you. It is 5:53 on Wall Street. Time now for the Bloomberg Law Report. Let's get to the legal stories we're watching this morning from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
The Internal Revenue Service has issued its highly anticipated final rules easing reporting requirements for nonprofits. Two female athletes at Idaho State University want to help defend Idaho's Fairness in Women's Sports Act against charges that the statute unconstitutionally discriminates against transgender women. The 11th Circuit reinstated a purported class action over the way Genworth Life and Annuity calculates life insurance rates.
Bloomberg Law. Everything you need, all on one legal research platform, including guidance, analysis, and Bloomberg Market Intelligence. Find out more at BloombergLaw.com.
And now another legal story we're watching. Bayer, known as Bayer in the U.S., reaching verbal agreements to resolve thousands of cancer lawsuits over its Roundup weed killer. That's according to a source who tells us that the settlements are part of a $10 billion plan. For more on the possible deal, Bloomberg's June Grasso speaks to Eric Gordon, a professor at the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan.
So Bayer has set aside reportedly $10 billion for this altogether, $8 billion for these current cases and $2 billion for future. With all these ifs and cases outstanding and lawyers not settling, is it possible that Bayer won't be able to come in at that number?
It is possible. It's possible that the number won't make sense to both sides. It's possible that when you split $8 billion or $10 billion amongst all of the cases, that there are too many cases that will get too little money to get those people to agree to a settlement. And then they would say, well, Bayer, you've got to put in more money. And Bayer could say, all right, we'll put in another $1 billion or another $2 billion. And they could say, never mind, because for another $1 billion, we can litigate every one of these cases forever. So the $8 billion or the $10 billion may not be firm, but it's a clear signal of the range. It's a clear signal to plaintiffs when this gets split up, don't be expecting $20 billion.
Now, why settle if you're going to keep Roundup on the market? It's going to continue to be sold without safety warnings.
That is the weirdest part of the settlement story. On the plaintiff's side, if you're really worried about people getting cancer and you really believe that Roundup causes the cancer, why would you agree to a settlement along the lines of, yep, keep selling it without the warning? Our complaint is that it's unsafe. Our complaint is that you failed to warn people. But as long as you pay us, we're okay with you continuing to do that. From the buyer side, it seems like, well, if they exercise that right and keep selling it without a warning, seems as if they're asking for another whole batch of new cases from people making the same claims. So that part of the rumored settlement thing is a real head-scratcher from both points of view.
And that's University of Michigan law professor Eric Gordon speaking with Bloomberg's June Garasso. Catch more of that interview plus analysis of the latest legal news by subscribing to the Bloomberg Law Podcast or downloading the show at Bloomberg.com/podcasts. And attorneys can find exceptional legal research and business development tools at BloombergLaw.com. Futures this morning are on the rise with S&P futures up about 40 points, Dow futures up 378, and NASDAQ futures up 98. The DAX in Germany's up 1.9%. 10-year Treasury, little change. The yield 0.69%. The yield on the 2-year 0.17%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.4% or 16 cents at $34.20 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.7% on $11.50 at $17.1670 an ounce. The euro 1.1013 against the dollar. The British pound 1.2332 and the yen 107.70. And Bloomberg Daybreak continues. This is Bloomberg.
Influential conversations from...
This is a message from the government. There is new guidance to help businesses and employees who cannot work from home be COVID-19 secure at work. The advice will help you conduct a risk assessment, put social distancing measures in place, improve hygiene and cleaning in the workplace, and look after the well-being of your employees. Every workplace is different. Use the guidance to make your business COVID-19 secure. Access the support you need at gov.uk/working safely. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Hairbands to kids. Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs. Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
Hit the court anytime with these great NBA podcasts on TuneIn. The Low Post.
So what struck you about this potential head-to-head matchup? What did we learn now that Zion is involved and LeBron and Zion go at each other for the first time?
You know, I still think both teams have to figure out kind of who are their guys when they get into a fourth quarter. I think you saw that with both of them. There were some kind of odd moments.
The Ringer NBA Show.
Who ended up winning the thing. But I did watch for a little bit when it was DeAndre Ayton and Zach LaVine playing against each other. And then as the days went on, Devin Booker was involved. Tell me you've seen the clip of Devin Booker when I can't remember who his opponent was.
Or the Haber Show.
At the end, it's because I worked in the NBA in the front office, and when I was 14 years old, my family moved back from Sudan to America. I went up high school here in New York
Find these and more NBA podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Wednesday, May 27th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
The reopen rally continues. U.S. futures gain as officials relax lockdowns.
Unrest takes hold in Hong Kong. Police fire pepper spray as protests in the city gather steam.
And sanctions targeting China. The White House considers penalties tied to Beijing's crackdown on Hong Kong.
New York Governor Cuomo meets with President Trump today, plus New Jersey's governor says outdoor graduations will be allowed in July. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. The NHL regular season is over. The Rangers and Islanders will be in the playoffs in July. Baseball made its economic proposal to the players.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. futures are pointing to a third straight day of gains. We're coming up to 6:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 39 points, Dow futures up 376, and NASDAQ futures up 99. The DAX in Germany is up 1.8%, CAC in Paris up 1.9%, and the FTSE 100 is up 1.6%. 10-year Treasury, little change, yield 0.69%. The yield on the 2-year, 0.17%. NYMEX crude oil is down a third of a percent, or 12 cents, at $34.23 a barrel. And COMEX gold down 0.7%, or $11.30 at $17.1680 an ounce. Nathan.
Karen, thanks. The gain in U.S. futures comes as the push to reopen continues and U.S. coronavirus cases continue to slow. For the very latest, we're joined live by Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
And good morning, Nathan. Data show daily COVID-19 cases across the country rising at the slowest pace since March, just 1.1%. That's down from last week's 1.4% rate. In New York, hospitalizations and deaths reached the lowest level since the outbreak began. Meantime, the Trump administration is targeting an aggressive expansion of testing. It wants to hit 13 million tests this month. With 5 days left in May, it's currently 4.5 million short of that goal. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is turning his attention to reopening New York City.
We're going to turn the page on COVID-19, and we're going to start focusing on reopening and how we reopen and how smart we are in reopening.
As hospitalizations head lower, New York Mayor Bill de Blasio is targeting the first half of June to restart business in the city, and that includes extra safety measures.
We're thinking about all the pieces. How do people come back to work? What kind of precautions need to be in place? How do we monitor it? How do we inspect it? How do we make sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing?
De Blasio says the city has hired 1,700 contact tracers. A Phase 1 reopening will likely include construction, manufacturing, and curbside pickup for retailers.
In California, at least 47 counties have started reopening. Even barbershops and salons in those regions are getting back to work as Governor Gavin Newsom sees infections holding steady. Here with details is Ed Baxter from our Bloomberg 960 newsroom in San Francisco.
Governor Newsom says stabilization in case numbers is the key.
Ultimately, we want to see them go down, but we are holding steady in that positivity rate, and that's encouraging news.
California has 58 counties, and the governor says individual guidelines and testing are on the state's website, but that on a regional basis, there is movement being made back into manufacturing and retail. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Ed, thank you. Across the Pacific, unrest is brewing again in Hong Kong. Police fired pepper spray downtown as protesters hit the street to oppose China's increased control over the city. Begin more from Bloomberg's Karen Lee in Hong Kong.
This is a return to a lot of the unrest that we saw last summer, and police have arrested at least 16 people so far today. And for a lot of people here, we're using today to get an idea of how big the protest movement could get as it seems to be resurging. Are we going to see things like we saw last summer on that scale, or is it going to be smaller, more scattered? So we're really looking at today as a bit of an indicator.
Demonstrations are being organized against China's plan to impose broad national security measures in Hong Kong. Hundreds have gathered to demonstrate in the city's central shopping hub. There's been a heavy police presence, and that's dispersed protesters in other areas across the city.
The White House is watching these protests closely. Now, sources tell us it's considering sanctions on China tied to the crackdown on Hong Kong. For the very latest on that front, we turn to Bloomberg's Saleha Mohsen in Washington.
The Treasury Department could impose controls on transactions and freeze assets of Chinese officials, businesses, and financial institutions for implementing the new national security law that is curtailing the rights and freedoms of Hong Kong citizens. So far, we know that the Trump administration is considering the range of sanctions. They have not come to any decision whether to do that yet.
Meantime, the House is set to pass a different set of legislation sanctioning Chinese officials for human rights abuses against Muslims. The measure passed the Senate with unanimous consent and also has broad support in the House. That vote is set for today.
Meantime, President Trump is also taking aim at Twitter. For the first time, the social network added a fact-check label to the president's tweets after he made unsubstantiated claims about mail-in voting. Twitter added links reading, quote, "Get the facts about mail-in ballots." President Trump did not take the move lightly. He responded with a tweet saying Twitter is completely stifling free speech, and I, as president, will not allow it to happen.
Turning to Europe now, we have details on plans to stem the economic fallout from the pandemic. Bloomberg News has learned the EU will propose a fiscal package today totaling more than $800 billion. Sources tell us funds would be distributed to member states through a combination of grants and loans. Here with more is Bloomberg's Maria Tadeo reporting from Brussels.
Everyone will have to agree to this. Ultimately, this is a unanimous decision that will have to be approved by all of the EU 27 member states. What is key here and really changes from prior debates in Europe is that even the fiscal hawks have gone very quiet. And countries like Austria are also saying, maybe there could be a compromise that we could agree to. We just don't want to see that becoming mutualized.
Austria, Denmark, Sweden, and the Netherlands have been pushing for loans over grants. Sources tell us a third of the funds in this proposal would come in the form of loans. The rest would be grants.
Also coming up today, an exclusive interview with John Williams. Tune in for a conversation with the New York Fed president at 9:30 a.m. Wall Street time. Catch that on both Bloomberg Radio and television. Futures this morning are on the rise. S&P futures up 37 points. Dow futures up 358 and NASDAQ futures up 90. 10-year Treasury, little change, yield 0.69%. Straight ahead, the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
Thanks, Karen. It's 6:07 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr is here with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo meets with President Trump today to discuss infrastructure. Cuomo outlined several infrastructure projects he'd like his state to tackle in partnership with the federal government.
There is no better time to build than right now. You need to restart the economy. You need to create jobs. And you need to renew and repair this country's economy and its infrastructure. Now is the time to do it.
The projects include a new Penn station, a train link to LaGuardia Airport, rebuilding train tunnels under the Hudson, and expanding the 2nd Avenue subway. Long Island will officially start the first phase of reopening its economy today. It comes after a shutdown of non-essential businesses for more than 2 months due to the coronavirus pandemic. New York City is seeking authority to borrow possibly as much as $7 billion if necessary to make up for the revenue lost because of the pandemic. It calls for the city's Transitional Finance Authority to issue debt to make up for the projected loss through mid-2021. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says he will unveil a plan today that will allow outdoor in-person graduations this summer with limits.
To the class of 2020, I am proud to say that you will have your opportunity to join with your classmates and families to celebrate your graduation.
Murphy says it will begin July 6th. A judge who suggested that a woman seeking a restraining order could close your legs to prevent a sexual assault was removed from the bench by the New Jersey Supreme Court. State Superior Court Judge John Russo was also permanently barred from presiding over a courtroom. Joe Biden says President Trump is a fool who is stoking deaths for suggesting that wearing a mask in public to combat the spread of COVID-19 isn't a sign of leadership. The presumptive Democratic presidential nominee also talked about President Trump attacking former President Barack Obama.
I was talking to a friend of mine today, a leader in the African-American community, and I said, why is he going after Barack? He said, because it stirs up his base. Barack's a black man. I don't know what that's the reason, but all of a sudden, Barack, most popular guy out there, and he's attacking Barack. What's that all about?
Biden also told CNN he hopes to resume in-person events soon. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Thanks, Michael. It's almost 6:10 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Good morning, John Stashar.
Good morning, Nathan. The NHL regular season is now officially over. Let the Stanley Cup playoffs begin. Commissioner Gary Bettman says it's what everyone wants.
Our fans are telling us in overwhelming numbers that they want us to complete the season, if at all possible. And our players and our teams are clear that they want to play and bring the season to its rightful conclusion.
Bettman announced a 24-team playoff field. That's up from the usual 16. The Rangers and Islanders will be part of it, not the Devils. The Rangers, who would not have made the playoffs normally, will face Carolina in the first round. Not known yet if that'll be a best of 5 or 7. The Islanders will take on Florida. They're not saying yet where. There will be a hub city for each conference. Training camp will begin no later than July 1st, so expect games mid to late July, pending final approval that this can all be done safely. The day after the first Memorial Day without baseball since 1880, the first economic proposal made by owners to players regarding pay and a shortened season without fans, and union reaction, not positive. One used the word disgusting. The Mets' Marcus Stroman tweeted out, having a season does not look promising. MLB is pitching a sliding scale where the highest paid players would see their salaries cut the most. Could lead to division among the players. The two sides need to come to an agreement if they're going to be able to play ball. The Jets just got Joe Flacco to be their backup quarterback, but he says coming off surgery, he won't be ready to play in Week 1. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan.
And John, another baseball team is cutting jobs due to the pandemic. The Oakland Athletics are placing scouts and other front office employees on furlough and suspending pay for minor leaguers and cutting salaries for executives, though the A's will continue to pay health care, 401k, and pension costs for employees. The A's are owned by John Fisher, whose family founded The Gap. Forbes estimates his wealth at more than $2 billion. This is Bloomberg.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seizechange.
This is a message from the government. There is new guidance to help businesses and employees who cannot work from home be COVID-19 secure at work. The advice will help you conduct a risk assessment, put social distancing measures in place, improve hygiene and cleaning in the workplace, and look after the well-being of your employees. Every workplace is different. Use the guidance to make your business COVID-19 secure. Access the support you need at gov.uk/working safely. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Thanks to National Lottery players, South Denbighshire Community Partnership are now delivering hot meals to elderly people in the community like Bob and Sarah.
Thank you.
And £600 million of National Lottery funding is on its way to thousands more local projects across the UK during these exceptional times.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
Here's Yvonne Mann.
Tom James, co-founder and CEO of commodities trade financing firm TradeFlow. Thank you so much for joining us. It seems like we're seeing commodities markets dealing with a little bit more about the optimism of economies reopening. But then again, you have these U.S.-China trade tensions that seem to be simmering once again. How does that impact your world of soft commodities?
So people still need to eat, and even though they may drive less, the oil demand is starting to pick up. And obviously we've seen cutbacks by Saudi and Russia as well, which have helped. It's definitely looking like a kind of a U-shaped recovery, not a V-shaped recovery. We've seen a lot of restrictions also on shipping and the movement of goods and people. So that takes time to recover. There's a bit of a backlog in the markets.
It's not just U.S. and China, but also China and Australia, where we've seen Beijing slap tariffs on Australian barley. How is that going to play out for the grain industry?
That is obviously causing some disruptions. We've seen climate change and weather also impacting a lot of the rice and grains markets. These types of tariffs are sort of boosting prices. We're seeing rice, for example, at all-time highs since about 2013-14. We've not seen these types of price rises. That's going to impact, obviously, people who are already having a tough time, and now general food prices are pushing up.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and this headline crossing the Bloomberg. Zoom Info Technologies, a business intelligence platform owned by private equity firms, is going ahead with an IPO. It filed to offer 44.5 million shares, anticipating a price range of $16 to $18 a share. European stocks and U.S. stock index futures are extending their advance this morning. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 35 points, Dow futures up 348, NASDAQ futures up 76. The DAX in Germany's up 1.8%. 10-year Treasury little change, yield 0.69%. The yield on the 2-year 0.17%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.8% or 29 cents at $34.07 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.5% or $9.10 at $17.19.10 an ounce. The euro 1.1014 against the dollar. British pound 1.2324. And the yen's at 107.72. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, U.S. coronavirus cases continue to slow. Bloomberg's John Tucker in New York has more in this live report.
And Michael, coronavirus cases in the U.S. increased 1.1% as compared to the same time yesterday. That's actually the slowest daily increase since March. Deaths in the U.S. now stand at over 98,000. New York saw its fewest new hospitalizations and fatalities since the outbreak began. There were 73 deaths, down from a high last month of nearly 800. And the Trump administration has released coronavirus testing targets for May, an aggressive expansion that would have some states doubling and quadrupling the number they had done through late April. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thank you, John. President Trump plans to travel to Florida to watch today's launch of SpaceX's manned test mission to the International Space Station. The launch will mark the first time NASA astronauts have blasted off from U.S. soil since the end of the Space Shuttle program in 2011. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Thanks, Michael. 6:19 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak, and the slowing coronavirus case count along with the reopening of economies are fueling a lot of optimism in markets. But what of the risk of a second wave of infection? For more, let's turn to Andy Pekos, professor of molecular microbiology and immunology at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Dr. Pekos, I'm sure you saw those images over the Memorial Day weekend of packed beach boardwalks and swimming pools. What was your reaction to that? Are we setting ourselves up for something we won't want?
Well, it's been a really long haul for the past 2 to 3 months, depending on where in the country you've been, in terms of, dealing with the public health interventions that we've had to limit the outbreak. We want to make sure we're not going to go backwards because it's been a long time that it took us to get this epidemic under control, and a second wave coming through would cause us to probably go back to another long period of time where we have these interventions in place to limit that. Social distancing has to be a common theme that everybody continues to practice, even when they have the ability to go out and go to beaches and stores and restaurants and those kind of things.
Are you concerned that businesses will be able to enforce social distancing as they push to reopen?
In Baltimore here, I've been pleasantly surprised how some of the businesses have responded to this and have put in place good measures to try to maintain social distancing. I think it's always going to be something that people have to be aware of. It's not just the business's responsibility. It's the people who are going into those businesses that have their own personal responsibility to maintain their own public health interventions and social distancing.
What are you looking at in terms of the possibility of a second wave of infection if social distancing isn't enforced as readily as you might like to see? I mean, what kinds of numbers could we be looking at?
Well, the next 2 weeks is what's going to be really important because that'll correspond with some of the loosening of public health interventions that has happened across many of the states. So what we'll be looking for primarily is the hospitalization rate. The main thing that social distancing does is it keeps the rate of severe infections down so that our hospitals don't get overwhelmed. So it's the hospitalization rate that's really, really going to be critical. We may see increased numbers of cases, but again, we're also ramping up testing, and so we should expect to see some increased numbers of perhaps mild and asymptomatic testing. But it's the hospitalization rates that are really going to be critical to keep an eye on.
I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the ramp up of testing. We heard from the White House this week that it plans to have something like 12.9 million tests done by the end of the month. Is that a goal that's feasible in your view?
I think it is. And I think as we move to the next phase of trying to deal with this pandemic, which is to go back to identifying cases and contact tracing them to isolate cases of COVID-19, we're going to need to have large amounts of testing that are freely available, that are available to people who are not just symptomatic, but who have had potential exposures. And so the more testing we have, the better we'll be at that contact tracing that we need to do to maintain this opening up of the economy.
And this is basically the swab testing, the simple testing that we saw New York Governor Cuomo do last week, right, in terms of seeing whether you've been infected, not necessarily the antibody tests.
Right. And, there's been some really good movement over the past few weeks in terms of tests that are using saliva as a means of checking for the virus and for checking for antibodies. We really are hoping that there'll be an easier way to do testing in the future, because that's going to facilitate even more testing.
Where are we in terms of the research on whether antibody testing can confirm whether people who have been infected are no longer infectious once they've let the disease run its course?
Yeah, so the definitive studies haven't been out there, but I would say that everything is looking very positive right now. It seems like the vast number of people who are infected generate a good antibody response. We find in those antibody responses these neutralizing antibodies that target the virus and stop the virus from replicating. So right now, all signs look good in terms of how people are responding to the infection. We're going to wait a couple more months to see how long these responses last. And as we keep following people, we'll look at the rate of reinfection in that population to see if that's really lower than in the regular population.
All right, Dr. Andy Penkosh, always good getting your insights. Thanks so much for being with us this morning. Andy Penkosh is professor of molecular microbiology and immunology at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. ThreadUp's annual resale report will say 70% of consumers have bought or are willing now to buy secondhand clothes. So Walmart doesn't want to let that get away. It's partnering with ThreadUp, the online secondhand clothing company, to sell used women and children's clothing on its website. It'll offer nearly 750,000 secondhand products online. The pandemic has flattened the travel sector. We may get more evidence of that this week. A union at Boeing says the company has told its leaders to expect job cuts that could reach 20% of union membership. And Dow Jones reports Amtrak is getting ready to cut 20% of its workforce in the next fiscal year. Ridership and ticket revenue have fallen by 95% since the pandemic started. On Wall Street, though, another day of optimism about reopening. S&P futures are up 35 points. NASDAQ futures up 80. Dow futures adding 345 points. I'm Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
What's the true value of your custodial relationship? Ben Harrison of BNY Mellon's Pershing explains.
As sophisticated investors demand more from their advisors, advisory firms, in turn, need to rely on their custodian to help them grow their complex businesses. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, supporting the rapid growth of RIAs is our number one priority. We understand what it means to deliver true value to our clients who are looking for a custodian that is aligned with their best interest and delivers high-value solutions, all in an open architecture environment with flexibility, choice, and transparency. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength, resiliency, and high-touch service that BNY Mellon Pershing provides. When you work with Pershing, we put your business first. Can your custodian say that?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Pershing Advisor Solutions, LLC. Member FINRA SIPC.
Have you wanted to speak a new language?
Picture in your mind a stylish Audi with striking LED headlights, sporty alloy wheels, and some of our most advanced features, including a 10-inch digital cockpit and smart assistant systems like lane departure warning. Picture what that Audi looks like. Now think smaller. The Audi A1. It's not a small car, it's a small Audi. Visit audi.co.uk. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
There's a reason flash storage is called flash storage and not electronic non-volatile computer memory storage. From quick and efficient data retrieval to instant scalability, everything about IBM flash storage is fast. It's also cloud-ready and surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £310 for 24 terabytes of all flash. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Find out more at ibm.biz/flash offer.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen. You can do your bit by working from home if you can. Avoid public transport and walk or cycle wherever possible. We're increasing the number of buses, trains and tubes we run, but they may still be busy during peak hours. If you must use public transport, avoid early mornings between 5:45 and 8:15 and evenings between 4 and 5:30. This will help those who must travel at this time to do so safely. Search TfL Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Whoa, just got a Moonpig reminder that it's your birthday Saturday.
Yeah, I set that up.
Oh, do you know what? I forget one time. Okay, I'm in the app.
Oh, the romantic card section.
I'm full of surprises. Now, what rhymes with babe?
How about just uploading a nice pic? No, wait, I'm not ready.
Hey, I love you from every angle. Now for the gifts. Oh, and flowers.
Heartfelt can happen anywhere with Moonpig.com. Download the app now.
Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 1061 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It is 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and we're just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures are gaining as lockdown measures ease across the country and coronavirus cases continue to slow. For the latest, we're joined live by Bloomberg's John Tucker. John, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. Data show daily COVID-19 cases rising at the slowest pace since March, just 1.1%. Compare that to the 1.4% rate from the prior week. In New York State, hospitalizations and deaths reached the lowest level since the outbreak began. In New York City, Mayor Bill de Blasio is targeting the first half of June to restart business, and Long Island starts to reopen today. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. Let's turn to Hong Kong now, where unrest is brewing again. Police fired pepper spray downtown as protesters hit the streets to oppose China's increased control over the city. Hundreds gathered in the city's central shopping hub, though there has been a heavy police presence that's dispersed demonstrators in other areas across the city.
The White House is watching those protests closely. Now sources tell us it's considering sanctions on China tied to the crackdown. And Bloomberg's Karen Lee has details from Hong Kong.
The Treasury Department could impose controls on transactions and freeze the assets of some Chinese officials and businesses because they implemented a new national security law here in Hong Kong that could curtail the rights and freedoms of Hong Kong citizens. We're also reporting that other measures under consideration by the Trump administration include visa restrictions for Communist Party officials.
Meantime, the House is set to pass a different set of legislation sanctioning Chinese officials for human rights abuses against Muslims. The measure passed the Senate with unanimous consent and also has broad support in the House. The vote is set for today.
President Trump and Twitter are picking a fight. For the first time, the social network added a fact-check label to the president's tweets after he made unsubstantiated claims about mail-in voting. Twitter added links reading, quote, "Get the facts about mail-in ballots." President Trump didn't take the move lightly. He responded with a tweet saying, "Twitter is completely stifling free speech, and I, as president, will not allow it to happen."
And finally, in Europe, we have details on plans to stem the economic fallout from the pandemic. Bloomberg News has learned the EU will propose a fiscal package today, totaling more than $800 billion. Sources say funds would be distributed to member states through a combination of grants and loans. Futures this morning on the rise. S&P futures up 36 points. Dow futures up 349. NASDAQ futures are up 77. The 10-year Treasury, little change, yield 0.69%. And the yield on the 2-year, 0.17%. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thanks. It's 6:33 on Wall Street. Now let's bring in Michael Barr for more on what's going on around the world. Michael?
Thank you very much, Nathan. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says he will travel to Washington to meet with President Donald Trump and plan to discuss major investments in infrastructure as a way to jumpstart a U.S. economy devastated by the coronavirus pandemic. During the briefing, Cuomo explained his plan for LaGuardia Airport.
Accelerating LaGuardia Airport, which is going to be the first new airport in this nation in 25 years. Traffic is low, passenger volume is lower. Let's accelerate that construction now.
Cuomo also says he will talk with the president about renovation and expansion of Penn Station in New York City. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says his state is ready to figure out how outdoor graduation ceremonies could happen over the summer. Murphy says more guidance will be released today.
To allow for outdoor graduation ceremonies to celebrate our students' accomplishments starting July 6th. This guidance will include social distancing requirements and other necessary health and safety measures.
COVID-19 cases in New Jersey have been on a downward trend, although the state hasn't seen 14 days of consecutive downward numbers for all COVID-19 metrics. Monday's video of an altercation between a white female executive and a black man in Central Park went viral almost immediately. Now the woman, Amy Cooper, was fired from her job at Franklin Templeton. Cooper is seen calling New York police on her mobile phone, saying there is an African-American man threatening her in Central Park.
Please don't come close to me.
Please take your phone off.
Please don't come close to
Can
me.
I'm taking a picture and calling the cops.
Please call the cops. Please call the cops.
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Please tell them whatever you like.
The man, Christian Cooper, had earlier asked her to leash her dog in the wooded area of the park, which is a requirement. She later told a news station that she is sorry for what happened. Protests were held in Minneapolis after an unarmed black man died following his arrest. George Floyd was pinned to the ground by a police officer who had his knee on Floyd's neck. 4 police officers have been fired. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thanks. It's 6:35 on Wall Street. John Stashower is here now at the Bloomberg Sports Update. John?
All right, Nathan, after a couple of months of speculation, we finally heard from a commissioner with a definite plan for resuming the season. Gary Bettman says the NHL will not have any more regular season games. There will be a 24-team playoff starting sometime in July at 2 hub cities. Which 2, he was not yet ready to say, but Las Vegas is seen as a favorite to land the games in the West. The top 4 teams in each conference will play round-robin games to determine top 4 seeding. The other 8 will face off in either a best of 5 or 7. The Rangers will play the Carolina Hurricanes. The Islanders will take on the Florida Panthers. The Devils, one of 7 teams not in the playoffs. They'll be in the draft lottery. But Bettman warns none of this is his top priority.
I want to make clear that the health and safety of our players, coaches, essential support staff, and our communities are paramount. While nothing is without risk, ensuring health and safety has been central to all of our planning so far and will remain so.
NHL says it is still hopeful next season we'll have the full 82 games. Baseball's pitch to the union regarding the economics of a return, featured by a sliding scale of reduced salaries where the highest paid players would see their pay cut the most. Yankee ace Garrett Cole just signed for $36 million a year. He'd make roughly $8 million. Early reaction from players on this proposal, not positive. The Ryder Cup still on for late September in Wisconsin. It's an event where fans usually are very loud, so Rory McIlroy says it should be put off until 2021. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan.
All right, John, thanks. It's 6:37 on Wall Street.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
HBO Max's biggest rival might be HBO. I'm Tara LaChapelle, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. The launch of HBO Max has finally arrived, but consumers don't seem to have a clue what's on the new streaming TV service. In a Morning Consult poll, most respondents couldn't pick out HBO Max content from a lineup of popular TV shows and movies. For example, less than 15% knew that the sitcoms Friends and The Big Bang Theory would now be on HBO Max. Even fewer correctly picked Sesame Street and the DC Comics films. Worse, 76% didn't know that Game of Thrones, one of HBO's most popular series ever, would also be available on HBO Max. The streaming wars have left consumers in a state of confusion, and it certainly doesn't help that AT&T's Warner Media now has multiple products bearing the HBO name. HBO Max, because of all its content, could give Netflix and Disney Plus a run for their money, but all the confusion might keep some consumers from signing up. I'm Tara LaChapelle. For more Bloomberg Opinion, please go to bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
And you can hear Bloomberg Opinion commentaries every weekday at this time. Terminal customers can read more at OPIN Go. It's 6:38 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Green Report. Here's Bob Moon.
Daimler is pushing ahead with plans to produce an all-electric version of its flagship Mercedes S-Class sedan starting next year, even as it cuts back in other areas amid a slump in demand across the industry. Speaking in a company webcast, Chief Executive Officer Ola Källenius said the company's main Mercedes-Benz cars unit aims to make all of its factories CO2 neutral by the end of 2022. That goal was previously limited to Europe. Källenius stressed that he considers it critical for the carmaker to stick to its main strategic goals, including eliminating carbon emissions.
Even though we are fighting the COVID-19 challenge, we're not taking the eye off the ball on what's going on strategically.
And because of its commitment to focus on all-electric and hybrids, he says the company's big challenge will be powering those vehicles.
We're going to need more batteries.
To that end, Daimler is building more battery factories from Europe to the U.S. and China. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
All right, Bob, thank you. From green to beige. Later today, the Federal Reserve issues its beige book, the Regional Economic Survey. And here with more is Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
Bloomberg Economics says the regional survey could provide clues on the economy's inflection point and the near-term outlook for the labor market. Georgia, for example, was one of the first states to reopen its economy, and the Atlanta Fed's contribution could shed some light on the situation. States have processed almost 40 million jobless claims since March. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Vinny, thanks. Also today, we hear from the New York Fed. President John Williams joins us for an exclusive interview coming up at 9:30 a.m. Wall Street time. You can catch that conversation on both Bloomberg Radio and television. Finally, Bloomberg News has learned Amazon is in talks to buy the driverless vehicle startup Zoox. A deal would accelerate Amazon's automation efforts. We're told the price is unlikely to be less than the $1 billion Zoox has already raised. Futures moving higher. S&P futures up 34 points. Dow futures up 341. NASDAQ futures up 62. This is Bloomberg.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seize change.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuit.
These days, we could all do with a bit more space, couldn't we? So how about building your own home office in the garden? With a complete kit from Simply Self Build, it's easy. You might not even need planning permission. And what's a home office by day can become a home cinema by night. Simply clever, simply better, simply cheaper. Home offices from Simply Self Build, bringing more space to your place. SimplySelfBuild.com.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that.
And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the U-Switch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
Picture in your mind a stylish Audi with striking LED headlights, sporty alloy wheels, and some of our most advanced features, including a 10-inch digital cockpit and smart assistant systems like lane departure warning. Picture what that Audi looks like. Now think smaller. The Audi A1. It's not a small car, it's a small Audi. Visit audi.co.uk. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik.
Emma, the UK's most awarded mattress in 2019. Try it out for 200 nights risk-free. Made in the UK. Go to emmamattress.co.uk to order now.
For more than 20 years, Asda supported our communities. We've raised over £23 million for Fair Share and the Trussell Trust. And recently, we've donated supplies to frontline NHS workers and carers. We've always been proud to serve those around us. Visit asda.com/creating change for better. Asda, we're all in this together.
We're all having to get used to the new normal. And at Birkbeck University, we're experts at being adaptable. As London's evening university, we've been flexing around the lives of busy commuters for nearly 200 years. And you can find everything you need to secure your place for autumn online. From expert advice to virtual tours, a live chat with our students and course applications. Make the new normal, studying for the career that you really want. Search Birkbeck, and it's new problem solved.
Information 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Special report, coronavirus update. The masks and the gloves are off in a Trump-Biden tiff.
Looking to get broader media exposure, former Vice President Biden did an in-person sit-down interview with CNN. The questioner sat about 10 feet away. He responded to the president's retweet, effectively mocking him for wearing a mask during the visit to a veterans memorial on Memorial Day.
He's a fool, an absolute fool to talk that way. I mean, every leading doc in the world is saying we should wear a mask when you're in a crowd.
Biden and his wife Jill wore masks in delivering a wreath to the wall of names. They also did not get close to others at the location, except for Secret Service personnel who opened SUV doors for them. Bob Costantini, Washington.
As the U.S. death toll nears 100,000 from the virus, only about half of Americans say they would get a COVID-19 vaccine, according to a new AP NORC poll. I'm John Trout.
Why all the top-tier experts? Because business is not a magic trick.
Give us a sense of the economic backdrop.
Bloomberg Markets.
Which financial records are these?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Futures are higher this morning. S&P futures up 35 points. Dow futures up 346. And NASDAQ futures up 66. The DAX in Germany's up 1.7%. 10-year Treasury, little change. Yield 0.69%. Yield on the 2-year, 0.17%. NYMEX crude oil down 1.2% or 41 cents at $33.94 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.7% or $11.30 at $17.17 an ounce. The euro 1.1019 against the dollar. The yen is at 107.73. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, President Trump plans to travel to Florida today to watch the launch of SpaceX's manned mission to the International Space Station. The launch will mark the first time NASA astronauts have blasted off from U.S. soil in 9 years. Republicans in the House mounted a legal challenge to a proxy voting procedure Democrats pushed through this month for colleagues who are housebound during the coronavirus pandemic. Global News 24 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thanks. We're live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. We're at 6:48 on Wall Street. Time now to check what's going on in D.C. Some of the top stories from the nation's capital include President Trump meeting with New York Governor Andrew Cuomo at the White House before heading to Canaveral for that SpaceX rocket launch. House Republicans heading to court to try to stop proxy voting, and Twitter adding a fact check for the first time to one of President Trump's tweets. Also making news, the U.S. considering a range of sanctions against China over its crackdown on Hong Kong. For the very latest, we're joined now by Bloomberg U.S. politics editor Kathleen Hunter. And from what we've been reporting, Kate, it's a range of fronts from the White House to Congress. So what's on the table here?
Well, I think, as you said, the main thing is that it looks as though the Treasury Department might be looking at freezing some transactions and imposing other penalties potentially on Chinese companies as well as individuals. And so I think those are sort of the main things that are potentially on the table, along with some visa restrictions potentially on Chinese officials as well.
So what are the chances that those kinds of sanctions get a serious look-see by the White House and actually get imposed?
Well, I think that it is something that does sound like it's seriously on the table. Trump was asked about it yesterday, and while he wasn't, committal one way or another, it's certainly at the very least being put out there as a bit of a trial balloon, to kind of put China on notice and Beijing on notice that this is something that the U.S. government is considering at this stage.
And obviously, this is related to the crackdown on Hong Kong. Meantime, in the House, it looks like some sanctions are going to pass on a different front.
Yeah, and this is more directly related to China's treatment of Muslim minority communities. This legislation would essentially impose some sanctions, human rights related sanctions in response to that. And that's something that passed the Senate earlier this year and is now potentially up for a final vote in the House, although there are some last minute snags at this point.
And it's interesting because the Trump administration hasn't always made the human rights issue something that it wants to bring up with China. But when you put that in contrast with these potential sanctions due to the crackdown on Hong Kong, I mean, how is that likely to affect U.S.-China relations? I mean, it seems like they're kind of at the lowest point, and they've been at low points for years here.
Absolutely, and it's a bit of a mixed bag because in one sense, the fact that this House legislation is related to a human rights issue means that it's likely to gain traction, or it is gaining traction in the democratically controlled House, and that there's a lot of bipartisan support, both in the House and Senate for moving this forward, and we're likely to see that today. That being said, I think people have noted that it's an interesting time for Trump, who, over time has talked about, President Xi Jinping as being a dear friend of his, someone that he, touts very often his relationship with. Now that, the U.S.-China relationship has essentially gone south in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic, we are seeing this increased emphasis on the part of the Trump administration and Republicans on China's human rights abuses, which is not something that the White House had really been focused on prior to this.
Now, when the House votes on the sanctions measure today, it's going to be doing it by proxy, and Republicans are going to court to try to stop that. Tell us more about what's happening there.
Yeah, this is one of these issues that's really interesting. It's because Democrats are in control of the House, Republicans are the ones that are getting very up in arms about the idea of proxy voting and changing this historical precedent to allow it. You've always been required, for the entirety of the House's existence, it's been a requirement that members come and vote in person. Now they're allowing, because of the social distancing necessitated by the coronavirus, they're allowing proxy voting. And that's something that the Democrats pushed through in order to continue to set their own rules in the House, that is their prerogative, but also to push forward their legislative agenda. Obviously, that's something Republicans want to stop. And so now we're seeing Republicans go to court to try to stop proxy voting, making this argument about the constitutionality of it and raising those questions, given that they are the ones that are in the minority and want to use all the tools at their disposal to stop the Democrats.
All right, it's going to be interesting to watch how that legal process plays out. Bloomberg U.S. politics editor Kathleen Hunter, thank you. As always, you can read more about all these stories at Bloomberg.com or on the Bloomberg terminal, and follow all the latest on Bloomberg Radio in Washington at Bloomberg 99.1 and 105.7 FM HD2. Karen.
All right, Nathan, thank you. We're coming up to 6:53 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg NJIT STEM Report. New Jersey Institute of Technology and the NJ Scholar Corps program incentivizing residents who attend college out of state to come home and finish their degree in New Jersey. Learn more at njit.edu/NJ. Come home. Now here's Bob Moon.
Karen, Nathan, good morning. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. We've been encountering a lot of disruptions since the coronavirus outbreak began, but you know it's bad when you can't even depend on receiving robocalls. Ever since the widely automated calling machine was released into the wild, those relentless intrusions into our lives have seemed as difficult to block as the coronavirus. Now, the robocall prevention app and service UMail reports the volume of robocalls received in the U.S. last month was at its lowest in 2 years, with the daily robocall average down a whopping 44%. Many of those lost robocalls had come from call centers in such places as India, Pakistan, and the Philippines, where the industry has been scrambling to equip workers who don't own laptops to support working from home. Some scam operations, meantime, have changed tactics to maximize the messages that are getting through, some targeting victims' stimulus checks, unemployment payments, and other benefits.
Hello, this is a call from the Social Security Administration. During these difficult times of the coronavirus, we regret to inform you that we have got an order to suspend your socials immediately within 24 hours due to suspicious and fraudulent activity found on your socials. We are contacting you as this case is critical and needs your urgent attention.
The federal government credits the robocall reduction to more aggressive efforts to stop coronavirus-related scams. That's the Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Nathan, Karen.
All right, Bob, thank you very much. It's coming up to 6:55 now on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Small Business Report with John Tucker. John, good morning.
Nathan, good morning. Clayton Bouchon owns the Cantina Lobos Mexican restaurant in Pelham, New York. We spoke with him 2 months ago. In the wake of the COVID-19 outbreak, his business was barely hanging on. Clayton joins us again now. Tell us, how's the restaurant surviving in a world of stay-at-home orders and takeout only?
We survived well. We're lucky that we're in a small town that's manageable, that's super supportive. We really concentrated on pivoting to takeout, and now we're actually starting to rethink about how we're going to strategize the restaurant, how we're going to make everybody feel safe, how we're going to continue to offer the takeout biz, because we think it's going to be strong to the summer, just because a lot of people don't want to go out.
Can you guess when the revenue will be back to pre-pandemic levels?
My gut tells me that the revenues were, close to pre-pandemic levels towards the end. I think that there's definitely been a tiring of it all, probably right around Cinco de Mayo, which was a boon for us, obviously. And then it hasn't tailed off. It's been solid to keep all my staff and to keep the hours up, but it's kind of tailed off. I think obviously people are getting a little tired of everything. I'm a little concerned about pivoting back to the restaurant, because they're only going to let us have, I don't know, they haven't announced exactly the amount, but we've heard anywhere from 25 to 50% of capacity. And who's going to want to come to the restaurant and sit inside? Will the takeout continue? So, I feel positive about the future, but we're pessimistic about it.
Have you any clarity as to when the dining room might reopen?
We're shooting on that the phase 1 is going to go well, and then phase 2. So we're looking at a month. We're starting to get our plexiglass in for the booths. We have booth seating, and so we're going to start plexiglassing the booths, and then. But no, there's no real guidance. I saw a little bit over the weekend that they said you're going to have to designate someone to be the chief cleaning expert and they're going to have to make sure that everything happens on time, everything gets wiped down after every seating, every bathroom gets cleaned after every bathroom use. So it might turn out that we have to have even more employees doing more things, like just one guy attending the bathroom all night long.
All right, Clayton, sounds like things will be different once things reopen in your area. Let us know how it goes. Clayton Bouchon, the owner of Cantina Lobos Mexican Restaurant in Pelham, New York. And we're going to continue bringing you the stories about small businesses struggling, pivoting, adapting in the face of this pandemic every day at this time on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That is your Bloomberg Small Business Report. Karen.
All right, John Tucker, thank you. S&P futures again higher this morning, up about 33 points. Dow futures up 332, and NASDAQ futures, they're up 66. And Bloomberg surveillance is straight ahead with Jonathan Farrell and Lisa Abramowitz. For Nathan Hager, I'm Karen Moscow, and this is Bloomberg.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television.
Tonight, it's a Lotto double rollover. Don't miss out. Play your numbers online or on the app today. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
This is a message from the government. There is new guidance to help businesses and employees who cannot work from home be COVID-19 secure at work. The advice will help you conduct a risk assessment, put social distancing measures in place, improve hygiene and cleaning in the workplace, and look after the well-being of your employees. Every workplace is different. Use the guidance to make your business COVID-19 secure. Access the support you need at gov.uk/workingsafely. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the USwitch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
The financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
I just don't think it's credible to believe that a long-term solution to the problems we're facing can be achieved by moving interest rates.
Economic forecasts are hazardous at best. They're even more so now.
The uncertainty associated with the pandemic is not likely to go away.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, and Lisa Abramowitz.
From New York City for our audience worldwide, good morning, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance with equity futures positive. We're live on Bloomberg TV and radio. Alongside Lisa Abramowitz, I'm Jonathan Farrell. Classic Tom Keene, day 2 of a brand new program for our simulcast on TV and radio. And what does he do, Lisa? Tom Keene takes the day off. We'll continue this conversation as normal. Let's just begin with the stimulus coming out of Japan. And Lisa, all the right noises coming out of the continent, coming out of Europe.
Yeah, I'm struggling, though, to understand this disconnect where you have these record stimulus plans being proposed and a pretty bleak outlook, certainly by the ECB's Madame Lagarde. And yet we see the fear of missing out trade in full force across equity markets, in particular the U.S. It just feels like if this FOMO trade continues, how much does the pressure get taken off some of the fiscal policymakers to continue with these types of programs, John?
I totally agree with you. And the other point, Lisa, that I would raise this morning is that the bond market just looks wide open for these fiscal policymakers to go forward and do more. Look at Europe right now. Italy rallying because of what Europe is about to do or what they're talking of doing. And then Germany not really backing up in a big way. We've had record issuance here in the United States. What have Treasury yields done? Not a whole lot. This market is wide open for these guys to do a whole lot more, Lisa.
Yeah, yesterday, for example, the Federal Reserve sold 2-year notes at the lowest ever yield of 0.178%, which brings us to what we're looking at for today. Today at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, you're seeing U.S. Treasuries selling another $45 billion of 5-year notes. Also at 2 p.m., the Fed is going to release its beige book, look for evidence of a possible reopening recovery that we're not seeing yet in the economic data, even though it's being priced into the market. And then I hear that someone I very much respect is interviewing the New York Fed President John Williams at 9:30 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Television. I think that's you, John.
I think that's Michael McKee. I seriously thought you were going to say Michael McKee then. It would be Michael McKee interviewing with John Williams alongside me, and I'm sure a lot more people respect Michael McKee than they do me. The two of us will be catching up with the New York Fed president. And Lisa, I think something we've really got to drill down on over the next couple of weeks. What is the objective of monetary policy at the Fed now? Quite clearly 2 months ago, it was market functioning. That's got to have changed in the last couple of months. And as you go from shutdown to reopening, does the nature, the character of the effort over at the Federal Reserve need to change somewhat, Lisa? I think that's going to be a big focus for us at 9:30 Eastern.
I'm glad that is, because honestly, this morning I was looking at CCC rated debt. This is the debt of companies closest to default, and it has outperformed other classes of debt so far this month, gaining more than 4%. You just have to wonder how uncomfortable Fed members are with this idea that they're pushing investors further into risk at a time when they've said they don't want to backstop solvency. They don't want to rescue companies that otherwise would go bankrupt, John.
I've got to say, I don't smell any discomfort whatsoever. Every time I speak to these guys, they seem really comfortable with what they're doing. We'll try and seek out some discomfort a little bit later. Looking forward to that on Bloomberg TV and on Bloomberg Radio. 9:30 Eastern with the New York Fed president, catching up with Michael McKee and me a little bit later this morning. We've got to talk about this reopening. We saw the pictures of beaches open over the weekend, and the beaches were packed. And I made the point in the last 24 hours that I think how that made you feel probably tells a lot about what you think about this market. For many people, it triggered fears of a second wave. For others, it fueled hopes that we'll reopen quicker and better than expected. To bring someone in who can give us more clarity on what he thinks on that situation, I'm really pleased to say that Julian Emmanuel joins us now of BTIG. Julian, let's talk about that. Did the weekend's photographs, the pictures of people getting back to normal, did it trigger fears of a second wave or fuel hopes that we can normalize faster?
I think it actually fueled both, John. First of all, it's very clear that the last several months have made this a more emotional time than usual. But I think when people saw those pictures, you had both, and again, somewhat dependent on the state you live in, whether the cases are rising or falling, and how the progress is. But it really drew out emotions. And then if you look at the weather, it was reasonably nice across the country, which I think has sort of fed into the optimism of share prices the last several days.
All right, so let's talk, Julian, about the emotion in stocks right now. What kind of reopening are equity investors pricing in? One that is steady and contained and doesn't include a second wave? Or is it something that comes in fits and starts, but at least is a beginning?
So it feels to us as if it's more a fits and starts type of issue. We've called this the potential for, everyone's using letters to describe the recovery. We call it a bathtub-shaped recovery, so that, you basically, the U is extended sort of into 2021, as it were.